This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Gemma Blythe. The Odyssey by Homer. Translated by Samuel Butler. Book 5. And now, as dawn rose from her couch beside Tithonus, harbinger of light alike to mortals and immortals, the gods met in council, and with them Jove the Lord of Thunder, who is their king. Thereon Minerva began to tell them of the many sufferings of Ulysses, for she pitied him away there in the house of the nymph Calypso. "Father Jove," said she, "and all you other gods that live in everlasting bliss, I hope there may never be such a thing as a kind and well-disposed ruler any more, nor one who will govern equitably. I hope they will all be henceforth cruel and unjust, for there is not one of his subjects but has forgotten Ulysses, who ruled them as though he were their father. There he is, lying in great pain, in an island where dwells the nymph Calypso, who will not let him go, and he cannot get back to his own country, for he can find neither ships nor sailors to take him over the sea. Furthermore, wicked people are now trying to murder his only son Telemachus, who is coming home from Elis and Lacedaemon, where he has been to see if he can get further news of his father." "What, my dear, are you talking about?" replied her father. "Did you not send him there yourself, because you thought it would help Ulysses to get home and punish the suitors? Besides, you are perfectly able to protect Telemachus, and to see him safely home again, while the suitors have to come scurrying back without having killed him." When he had thus spoken, he said to his son Mercury, "Mercury, you are our messenger. Go therefore and tell Calypso we have decreed that for Ulysses is to return home. He is to be convoyed neither by gods nor men, but after a perilous voyage of 20 days upon a raft, he is to reach fertile Scheria, the land of the Phaeacians, who are near of kin to the gods, and will honor him as though he were one of ourselves. They will send him in a ship to his own country, and will give him more bronze and gold and raiment than he would have brought back from Troy if he had all his prize money and had got home without disaster. This is how we have settled that he shall return to his country and his friends." Thus he spoke, and Mercury, guide and guardian, slayer of Argus, did as he was told. Forthwith he bound on his glittering golden sandals, with which he could fly like the wind over land and sea. He took the wand with which he seals men's eyes in sleep, or wakes them just as he pleases, and flew holding it in his hand over Pieria. Then he swooped down through the firmament till he reached the level of the sea, whose waves he skimmed like a cormorant that flies fishing every hole and corner of the ocean, and drenching its thick plumage in the spray. He flew and flew over many a weary wave, but when at last he got to the island which was his journey's end, he left the sea and went on by land till he came to the cave where the nymph Calypso lived. He found her at home. There was a large fire burning on the hearth, and one could smell from far the fragrant reek of burning cedar and sandalwood. As for herself, she was busy at her loom, shooting her golden shuttle through the warp and singing beautifully. Round her cave there was a thick wood of alder, poplar, and sweet-smelling cypress trees, wherein all kinds of great birds had built their nests, owls, hawks, and chattering sea-crows that occupy their business in the waters. A vine loaded with grapes was trained and grew luxuriantly about the mouth of the cave. There were also 4 running rills of water in channels cut pretty close together, and turned hither and thither, so as to irrigate the beds of violets and luscious herbage over which they flowed. Even a god could not help being charmed with such a lovely spot. So Mercury stood still and looked at it, But when he had admired it sufficiently, he went inside the cave. Calypso knew him at once, for the gods all know each other, no matter how far they live from one another. But Ulysses was not within. He was on the seashore as usual, looking out upon the barren ocean, with tears in his eyes, groaning and breaking his heart for sorrow. Calypso gave Mercury a seat and said, "Why have you come to see me, Mercury? Honored and ever welcome, for you do not visit me often. Say what you want. I will do it for you at once if I can, and if it can be done at all. But come inside, and let me set refreshment before you." As she spoke, she drew a table loaded with ambrosia beside him, and mixed him some red nectar. So Mercury ate and drank till he had had enough, and then said, "We are speaking god and goddess to one another, and you ask me why I have come here, and I will tell you truly, as you would have me do. Jove sent me. It was no doing of mine. Who could possibly want to come all this way over the sea, where there are no cities full of people to offer me sacrifices or choice hecatombs? Nevertheless, I had to come, for none of us other gods can cross Jove, nor transgress his orders. He says that you have here the most ill-starred of all those who fought 9 years before the city of King Priam, and sailed home in the 10th year after having sacked it. On their way home they sinned against Minerva, who raised both wind and waves against them, so that all his brave companions perished, and he alone was carried hither by wind and tide. Jove says that you are to let this man go at once, for it is decreed that he shall not perish here, far from his own people, but shall return to his house and country and see his friends again." Calypso trembled with rage when she heard this. "You gods," she exclaimed, "ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You are always jealous and hate seeing a goddess take a fancy to a mortal man and live with him in open matrimony. So when rosy-fingered Dawn made love to Orion, you precious gods were all of you furious till Diana went and killed him in Ortygia. So again, when Ceres fell in love with Aetion, and yielded to him in a thrice-plowed fallow field, Jove came to hear of it before so long and killed Aetion with his thunderbolts. And now you are angry with me too, because I have a man here. I found the poor creature sitting all alone astride of a keel, for Jove had struck his ship with lightning and sunk it in mid-ocean, so that all his crew were drowned, while he himself was driven by wind and waves onto my island. I got fond of him and cherished him, and had set my heart on making him immortal, so that he should never grow old all his days. Still I cannot cross Jove, nor bring his counsels to nothing. Therefore, if he insists upon it, let the man go beyond the seas again. But I cannot send him anywhere myself, for I have neither ships nor men who can take him. Nevertheless, I will readily give him such advice in all good faith as will be likely to bring him safely to his own country." "Then send him away," said Mercury, "or Jove will be angry with you and punish you." On this he took his leave, and Calypso went out to look for Ulysses, for she had heard Jove's message. She found him sitting upon the beach, with his eyes ever filled with tears, and dying of sheer homesickness, for he had got tired of Calypso, and though he was forced to sleep with her in the cave by night, it was she, not he, that would have it so. As for the daytime, he spent it on the rocks and on the seashore, weeping, crying aloud for his despair, and always looking out upon the sea. Calypso then went close up to him and said, "My poor fellow, you shall not stay here grieving and fretting your life out any longer. I am going to send you away of my own free will. So go, cut some beams of wood, and make yourself a large raft with an upper deck, that it may carry you safely over the sea. I will put bread, wine, and water on board to save you from starving. I will also give you clothes, and will send you a fair wind to take you home, if the gods in heaven so will it, for they know more about these things and can settle them better than I can." Ulysses shuddered as he heard her. "Now, goddess," he answered, "there is something behind all this. You cannot be really meaning to help me home when you bid me do such a dreadful thing as put to sea on a raft. Not even a well-found ship with a fair wind could venture on such a distant voyage. Nothing that you can say or do shall make me go on board a raft unless you first solemnly swear that you mean me no mischief." Calypso smiled at this and caressed him with her hand. "You know a great deal," said she, "but you are quite wrong here. May heaven above and earth below be my witnesses, with the waters of the river Styx, and this is the most solemn oath which a blessed God can take, that I mean you no sort of harm, and am only advising you to do exactly what I should do myself in your place. I am dealing with you quite straightforwardly. My heart is not made of iron, and I am very sorry for you." When she had thus spoken, she led the way rapidly before him, and Ulysses followed in her steps. So the pair, goddess and man, went on and on till they came to Calypso's cave, where Ulysses took the seat that Mercury had just left. Calypso set meat and drink before him, of the food that mortals eat, but her maids brought ambrosia and nectar for herself, and they laid their hands on the good things that were before them. When they had satisfied themselves with meat and drink, Calypso spoke, saying, "Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, so you would start home to your own land at once? Good luck go with you, but if you could only know how much suffering is in store for you before you get back to your own country, you would stay where you are. Keep house along with me, and let me make you immortal, no matter how anxious you may be to see this wife of yours, of whom you are thinking all the time, day after day. Yet I flatter myself that I am no whit less tall or well-looking than she is, for it is not to be expected that a mortal woman should compare in beauty with an immortal." "Goddess," replied Ulysses, "do not be angry with me about this. I am quite aware that my wife Penelope is nothing like so tall or so beautiful as yourself. She is only a woman, whereas you are an immortal. Nevertheless, I want to get home, and can think of nothing else. If some god wrecks me when I am on the sea, I will bear it and make the best of it. I have had infinite trouble both by land and sea already, so let this go with the rest." Presently the sun set, and it became dark, whereon the pair retired into the inner part of the cave and went to bed. When the child of morning, rosy-fingered Dawn, appeared, Ulysses put on his shirt and cloak, while the goddess wore a dress of a light gossamer fabric, very fine and graceful, with a beautiful golden girdle about her waist and a veil to cover her head. She at once set herself to think how she could speed Ulysses on his way. So she gave him a great bronze axe that suited his hands. It was sharpened on both sides and had a beautiful olive wood handle fitted firmly onto it. She also gave him a sharp adze, and then led the way to the far end of the island where the largest trees grow, alder, poplar, and pine, that reach the sky, very dry and well seasoned, so as to sail light for him in the water. Then, when she had shown him where the best trees grow, Calypso went home, leaving him to cut them, which he soon finished doing. He cut down 20 trees in all, and adds them smooth, squaring them by rule in good workmanlike fashion. Meanwhile Calypso came back with some augers, so he bore holes with them, and fitted the timbers together with bolts and rivets. He made the raft as broad as a skilled shipwright makes the beam of a large vessel, and he filed a deck on top of the ribs, and ran a gunwale all around it. He also made a mast of yardarm and a rudder to steer with. He fenced the raft all round with wicker hurdles as a protection against the waves, and then he threw on a quantity of wood. By and by, Calypso brought him some linen to make the sails, and he made these too excellently, making them fast with braces and sheets. Last of all, with the help of levers, he drew the raft down into the water. In 4 days he had completed the whole work, and on the 5th Calypso sent him from the island. After washing him and giving him some clean clothes, she gave him a goatskin full of black wine, and another larger one of water. She also gave him a wallet full of provisions, and found him much good meat. Moreover, she made the wind fair and warm for him, and gladly did Ulysses spread his sail before it, while he sat and guided the raft skillfully by means of the rudder. He never closed his eyes, but kept them fixed on the Pleiades, on late-setting boots, and on the bear, which men also called the wain, and which turns round and round where it is, facing Orion, and alone never dipping into the stream of Oceanus, for Calypso had told him to keep this to his left. Days 7 and 10 did he sail over the sea, and on the 18th the dim outlines of the mountains on the nearest part of the Phaeacian coast appeared, rising like a shield on the horizon. But King Neptune, who was returning from the Ethiopians, caught sight of Ulysses a long way off, from the mountains of the Salmi. He could see him sailing upon the sea, and it made him very angry. So he wagged his head and muttered to himself, saying, "Heavens, so the gods have been changing their minds about Ulysses while I was away in Ethiopia. And now he is close to the land of the Phaeacians, where it is decreed that he shall escape from the calamities that have befallen him. Still, he shall have plenty of hardship yet, before he has done with it." Thereon he gathered his clouds together, grasped his trident, stirred it round in the sea, and roused the rage of every wind that blows till earth, sea, and sky were hidden in cloud, and night sprang forth out of the heavens. Winds from east, south, north, and west fell upon him all at the same time, and a tremendous sea got up, so that Ulysses' heart began to fail him. "Alas," he said to himself in his dismay, "whatever will become of me? I am afraid Calypso was right when she said I should have trouble by sea before I got back home. It is all coming true. How black is Jove making heaven with his clouds, and what a sea the winds are raising from every quarter at once. I am now safe to perish. Blessed and thrice blessed were those Danaans who fell before Troy in the cause of the sons of Atreus. Would that had been killed on the day when the Trojans were pressing me so sorely about the dead body of Achilles, for then I should have had due burial, and the Achaeans would have honored my name. But now it seems that I shall come to a most pitiable end." As he spoke, a sea broke over him with such terrific fury that the raft reeled again, and he was carried overboard a long way off. He let go the helm, and the force of the hurricane was so great that it broke the mast halfway up, and both sail and yard went over into the sea. For a long time Ulysses was under water, and it was all he could do to rise to the surface again, for the clothes Calypso had given him weighed him down. But at last he got his head above water and spat out the bitter brine that was running down his face in streams. In spite of all this, however, he did not lose sight of his raft, but swam as fast as he could towards it, got hold of it, and climbed on board again so as to escape drowning. The sea took the raft and tossed it about as autumn winds whirl thistle down round and round upon a road. It was as though the south, north, east, and west winds were all playing battledore and shuttlecock with it at once. When he was in this plight, Ino, daughter of Cadmus, also called Leucothea, saw him. She had formerly been a mere mortal, but had been since raised to the rank of a marine goddess. Seeing in what great distress Ulysses now was, she had compassion upon him, and rising like a seagull from the waves, took her seat upon the rock. "My poor good man," said she, "why is Neptune so furiously angry with you? He is giving you a great deal of trouble, but for all his bluster he will not kill you. You seem to be a sensible person. Do then as I bid you. Strip, leave your raft to drive before the wind, and swim to the Phaeacian coast where better luck awaits you. And here, take my veil and put it round your chest. It is enchanted, and you can come to no harm so long as you wear it. As soon as you touch land, take it off. Throw it back as far as you can into the sea, and then go away again." With these words she took off her veil and gave it to him. Then she dived down again like a seagull and vanished beneath the dark blue waters. But Ulysses did not know what to think. "Alas," he said to himself in his dismay, "this is only some one or other of the gods who is luring me to ruin by advising me to quit my raft. At any rate, I will not do so at present. for the land where she said I should be quit of all troubles seemed to be still a good way off. I know what I will do. I am sure it will be best, no matter what happens. I will stick to the raft as long as her timbers hold together, but when the sea breaks her up, I will swim for it. I do not see how I can do any better than this." While he was thus in two minds, Neptune sent a terrible great wave that seemed to rear itself above his head, till it broke right over the raft, which then went to pieces as though it were a heap of dry chaff tossed about by a whirlwind. Ulysses got astride of one plank and rode upon it as if he were on horseback. He then took off the clothes Calypso had given him, bound Ino's veil under his arms, and plunged into the sea, meaning to swim on shore. King Neptune watched him as he did so, and wagged his head, muttering to himself and saying, "There now, swim up and down as you best can, till you fall in with the well-to-do people. I do not think you will be able to say that I have let you off too lightly." On this he lashed his horses and drove to Aegea, where his palace is. But Minerva resolved to help Ulysses, so she bound the ways of all the winds except one and made them lie quite still. But she roused a good stiff breeze from the north that should lay the waters till Ulysses reached the land of the Phaeacians, where he would be safe. Thereon he floated about for 2 nights and 2 days in the water, with a heavy swell on the sea and death staring him in the face. But when the 3rd day broke, the wind fell, and there was a dead calm without so much as a breath of air stirring. As he rose on the swell, he looked eagerly ahead, and could see land quite near. Then, as children rejoice when their dear father begins to get better, after having for a long time borne sore affliction, sent him by some angry spirit, but the gods deliver him from evil, so was Ulysses thankful when he again saw land and trees, and swam on with all his strength, that he might once more set foot upon dry ground. When, however, he got within earshot, he began to hear the surf thundering up against the rock, for the swell still broke against them with a terrific roar. Everything was enveloped in spray. There were no harbors where a ship might ride, nor shelter of any kind, but only headlands, low-lying rocks, and mountain tops. Ulysses' heart now began to fail him, and he said despairingly to himself, "Alas, Jove has let me see land after swimming so far that I had given up all hope. But I can find no landing place, for the coast is rocky and surf-beaten. The rocks are smooth and rise sheer from the sea, with deep water close under them, so that I cannot climb out for want of foothold. I am afraid some great wave will lift me off my legs and dash me against the rocks as I leave the water, which would give me a sorry landing. If, on the other hand, I swam further in search of some shelving beach or harbor, a hurricane may carry me out to sea again, sorely against my will, or heaven may send some great monster of the deep to attack me, for Amphitrite breeds many such, and I know that Neptune is very angry with me." While he was thus in two minds, a wave caught him and took him with such force against the rocks that he would have been smashed and torn to pieces if Minerva had not shown him what to do. He caught hold of the rock with both hands and clung to it, groaning with pain, till the wave retired, so he was saved that time. But presently the wave came on again and carried him back with it, far into the sea, tearing his hands as the suckers of a polypus are torn when someone plucks it from its bed, and the stones come up along with it. Even so did the rocks tear the skin from his strong hands, and then the wave drew him deep down under the water. Here poor Ulysses would have certainly perished, even in spite of his own destiny, if Minerva had not helped him to keep his wits about him. He swam seaward again, beyond reach of the surf that was beating against the land, and at the same time he kept looking towards the shore to see if he could find some haven, or a spit that should take the waves aslant. By and by, as he swam on, he came to the mouth of a river, and here he thought would be the best place, for there were no rocks, and it afforded shelter from the wind. He felt that there was a current, so he prayed inwardly, and said, "Hear me, O king, whoever you may be, and save me from the anger of the sea god Neptune. for I approach you prayerfully. Anyone who has lost his way has at all times a claim even upon the gods. Wherefore in my distress I draw near to your stream and cling to the knees of your river-bed. Have mercy upon me, O king, for I declare myself your suppliant. Then the god stayed his stream and stilled the waves, making all calm before him, and bringing him safely into the mouth of the river. Here, at last, Ulysses' knees and strong hands failed him, for the sea had completely broken him. His body was all swollen, and his mouth and nostrils ran down like a river of sea water, so that he could neither breathe nor speak, and lay swooning with sheer exhaustion. Presently, when he got his breath and came to himself again, he took off the scarf that Ino had given him and threw it back into the salt stream of the river, where Ino received it into her hands from the wave that bore it towards her. Then he left the river, laid himself down among the rushes, and kissed the bounteous earth. Alas, he cried to himself in his dismay, whatever will become of me, and how is it all to end? If I stay here upon the river-bed, through the long watches of the night, I am so exhausted that the bitter cold and damp may make an end of me, for toward sunrise there will be a keen wind blowing from off the river. If on the other hand I climb the hillside, find shelter in the woods, and sleep in some thicket, I may escape the cold and have a good night's rest, but some savage beast may take advantage of me and devour me. In the end he deemed it best to take to the wood, and he found one upon some high ground not far from the water. There he crept beneath 2 shoots of olive that grew from a single stalk, the one an ungrafted sucker, while the other had been grafted. No wind, however squally, could break through the cover they afforded, nor could the sun's rays pierce them, nor the rain get through them, so closely did they grow into one another. Ulysses crept under these and began to make himself a bed to lie on, for there was a great litter of dead leaves lying about, enough to make a covering for 2 or 3 men, even in hard winter weather. He was glad enough to see this, so he laid himself down and heaped the leaves all round him. Then, as one who lives alone in the country, far from any neighbor, hides a brand as fire seed in the ashes to save himself from having to get a light elsewhere, even so did Ulysses cover himself up with leaves, and Minerva shed a sweet sleep upon his eyes, closed his eyelids, and made him lose all memories of his sorrows. End of Book 5.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Gesine. The Odyssey by Homer. Book 6. The meeting between Nausicaa and Ulysses. So here Ulysses slept, overcome by sleep and toil, but Minerva went off to the country and city of the Phaeacians, a people who used to live in the fair town of Hyperia, near the lawless Cyclopes. Now the Cyclopes were stronger than they, and plundered them, so their king, Nausithous, moved them thence, and settled them in Scheria, far from all other people. He surrounded the city with a wall, built houses and temples, and divided the lands among his people. But he was dead and gone to the house of Hades, and King Alcinous, whose counsels were inspired of heaven, was now reigning. To his house, then, did Minerva hie in furtherance of the return of Ulysses. She went straight to the beautifully decorated bedroom, in which there slept a girl who was as lovely as a goddess, Nausicaa, daughter to King Alcinous. 2 maidservants were sleeping near her, both very pretty, one on either side of the doorway, which was closed, with well-made folding doors. Minerva took the form of the famous sea captain Dionysus' daughter, who was a bosom friend of Nausicaa, and just her own age. Then, coming up to the girl's bedside like a breath of wind, she hovered over her head and said, "Nausicaa, what can your mother have been about to have such a lazy daughter? Here are your clothes all lying in disorder, yet you are going to be married almost immediately, and should not only be well dressed yourself, but should find good clothes for those who attend you. This is the way to get yourself a good name, and to make your father and mother proud of you. Suppose, then, that we make tomorrow a washing day, and start at daybreak. I will come and help you, so that you may have everything ready as soon as possible, for all the best young men among your own people are courting you, and you are not going to remain a maid much longer. Ask your father, therefore, to have a wagon and mules ready for us at daybreak, to have the rugs, robes, and girdles, and you can ride too, which will be much pleasanter for you than walking, for the washing cisterns are some way from the town." When she had said this, Minerva went away to Olympus, which they say is the everlasting home of the gods. Here no wind beats roughly, and neither rain nor snow can fall, but it abides in everlasting sunshine, and in a great peacefulness of light, wherein the blessed gods are illumined for ever and ever. This was the place to which the goddess went when she had given instruction to the girl. By and by morning came and woke Nausicaa, who began wondering about her dream. She therefore went to the other end of the house to tell her father and mother all about it, and found them in their own room. Her mother was sitting by the fireside, spinning her purple yarn, with her maids around her, and she happened to catch her father just as he was going out to attend a meeting of the town council, which the Phaeacian aldermen had convened. She stopped him and said, "Papa dear, could you manage to let me have a good big wagon? I want to take all our dirty clothes to the river and wash them. You are the chief man here, so it is only right that you should have a clean shirt when you attend meetings of the council. Moreover, you have 5 sons at home, 2 of them married, while the other 3 are good-looking bachelors. You know they always like to have clean linen when they go to a dance, and I have been thinking about all this." She did not say a word about her own wedding, for she did not like to, but her father knew and said, "You shall have the mules, my love, and whatever else you have a mind for. Be off with you, and the men shall get you a good strong wagon with a body to it that will hold all your clothes." On this he gave his orders to the servants, who got the wagon out, harnessed the mules, and put them to, while the girl brought the clothes down from the linen room and placed them on the wagon. Her mother prepared her a basket of provisions with all sorts of good things, and a goatskin full of wine. The girl now got into the wagon, and her mother gave her also a golden cruse of oil, that she and her women might anoint themselves. Then she took the whip and reins and lashed the mules on, whereon they set off, and their hoofs clattered on the road. They pulled without flagging, and carried not only Nausicaa and her wash of clothes, but the maids also who were with her. When they reached the waterside, they went to the washing cisterns, through which there ran at all times enough pure water to wash any quantity of linen, no matter how dirty. Here they unharnessed the mules and turned them out to feed on the sweet, juicy herbage that grew by the waterside. They took the clothes out of the wagon, put them in the water, and vied with one another in treading them in the pits to get the dirt out. After they had washed them and got them quite clean, they laid them out by the seaside, where the waves had raised a high beach of shingle, and set about washing themselves and anointing themselves with olive oil. Then they got their dinner by the side of the stream, and waited for the sun to finish drying the clothes. When they had done dinner, they threw off the veils that covered their heads, and began to play at ball, while Nausicaa sang for them. As the huntress Diana goes forth upon the mountains of Taygetus or Erymanthus to hunt wild boars or deer, and the wood nymphs, daughter of aegis-bearing Jove, take their sport along with her. Then is Leto proud at seeing her daughter stand a full head taller than the others, and eclipse the loveliest amid a whole bevy of beauties. Even so did the girl outshine her handmaids. When it was time for them to start home, and they were folding the clothes and putting them into the wagon, Minerva began to consider how Ulysses should wake up and see the handsome girl who was to conduct him to the city of the Phaeacians. The girl, therefore, threw a ball at one of the maids, which missed her and fell into deep water. On this they all shouted, and the noise they made woke Ulysses, who sat up in his bed of leaves and began to wonder what it might all be. "Alas," said he to himself, "what kind of people have I come amongst? Are they cruel, savage, and uncivilized, or hospitable and humane? I seem to hear the voice of young women, and they sound like those of the nymphs that haunt mountain tops, or springs of rivers and meadows of green grass. At any rate, I am among a race of men and women. Let me try if I cannot manage to get a look at them." As he said this, he crept from under his bush, and broke off a bough covered with thick leaves to hide his nakedness. He looked like some lion of the wilderness that stalks about exulting in his strength, and defying both wind and rain. His eyes glare as he prowls in quest of oxen, sheep, or deer, for he is famished, and will dare break even into a well-fenced homestead, trying to get at the sheep. Even such did Ulysses seem to the young women, as he drew near to them all naked as he was, for he was in great want. On seeing one so unkempt and so begrimed with salt water, the others scampered off along the spits that jutted out into the sea, but the daughter of Alcinous stood firm, for Minerva put courage into her heart and took away all fear from her. She stood right in front of Ulysses, and he doubted whether he should go up to her, throw himself at her feet and embrace her knees as a suppliant, or stay where he was and entreat her to give him some clothes and show him the way to the town. In the end he deemed it best to entreat her from a distance, in case the girl should take offence at his coming near enough to clasp her knees. So he addressed her in a honeyed and persuasive language. "O Queen," he said, "I implore your aid, but tell me, are you a goddess, or are you a mortal woman? If you are a goddess and dwell in heaven, I can only conjecture that you are Jove's daughter Diana, for your face and figure resemble none but hers. If, on the other hand, you are a mortal, and live on earth, thrice happy are your father and mother, thrice happy too are your brothers and sisters. How proud and delighted they must feel when they see so fair a scion as yourself going out to a dance. Most happy, however, of all will be he whose wedding gifts have been the richest, and who takes you to his own home. I never yet saw anyone so beautiful, neither man nor woman, and am lost in admiration as I behold you. I can only compare you to a young palm tree, which I saw when I was at Delos, growing near the altar of Apollo, for I was there too, with much people after me, when I was on that journey which has been the source of all my troubles. Never yet did such a young plant shoot out of the ground as that was, and I admired and wondered at it exactly as I now admire and wonder at yourself. I dare not clasp your knees, but I am in great distress. Yesterday made the 20th day that I had been tossing about upon the sea. The winds and waves have taken me all the way from the Aegean island, and now fate has flung me upon this coast, that I may endure still further suffering, for I do not think that I have yet come to the end of it, but rather that heaven has still much evil in store for me. And now, O Queen, have pity upon me, for you are the first person I have met, and I know no one else in this country. Show me the way to the town, and let me have anything that you may have brought hither to wrap your clothes in. May heaven grant you in all things your heart's desire, husband, house, and a happy, peaceful home, for there is nothing better in this world than that man and wife should be of one mind in a house. It discomfits their enemies, makes the hearts of their friends glad, and they themselves know more about it than anyone. To this Nausicaa answered, Stranger, you appear to be a sensible, well-disposed person. There is no accounting for luck. Jove gives prosperity to rich and poor just as he chooses. So you must take what he has seen fit to send you, and make the best of it. Now, however, we have come to this our country, we shall not want for clothes, nor for anything else that a foreigner in distress may reasonably look for. I will show you the way to the town, and will tell you the name of our people. We are called Phaeacians, and I am daughter to Alcinous, in whom the whole power of the state is vested. Then she called her maids and said, Stay where you are, you girls. Can you not see a man without running away from him? Do you take him for a robber or a murderer? Neither he nor anyone else can come here to do us Phaeacians any harm, for we are dear to the gods, and live apart on the land's end that juts into the sounding sea, and have nothing to do with any other people. This is only some poor man who has lost his way, and we must be kind to him, for strangers and foreigners in distress are under Jove's protection, and will take what they can get, and be thankful. So, girls, give the poor fellow something to eat and drink, and wash him in the stream at some place that is sheltered from the wind. On this the maids left off running away, and began calling one another back. They made Ulysses sit down in the shelter, as Nausicaa had told them, and brought him a shirt and cloak. They also brought him the little golden cruse of oil, and told him to go and wash in the stream. But Ulysses said, Young women, please to stand a little on one side, that I may wash the brine from my shoulders and anoint myself with oil, for it is long enough since my skin has had a drop of oil upon it. I cannot wash as long as you all keep standing here. I am ashamed to strip before a number of good-looking young women. Then they stood on one side, and went to tell the girl, while Ulysses washed himself in the stream, and scrubbed the brine from his back and from his broad shoulders. When he had thoroughly washed himself, and had got the brine out of his hair, he anointed himself with oil, and put on the clothes which the girl had given him. And Minerva made him look taller and stronger than before. She also made the hair grow thick on the top of his head, and flow down in curls like hyacinth blossoms. She glorified him about the head and shoulders as a skilful workman, who has studied art of all kinds under Vulcan, and Minerva enriches a piece of silver plate by gilding it, and his work is full of beauty. Then he went and sat down a little way off upon the beach, looking quite young and handsome, and the girl gazed on him with admiration. Then she said to her maids, Hush, my dears, for I want to say something. I believe the gods who live in heaven have sent this man to the Phaeacians. When I first saw him, I thought him plain, but now his appearance is like that of the gods who dwell in heaven. I should like my future husband to be just such another as he is, if he would only stay here and not want to go away. However, give him something to eat and drink. They did as they were told, and set food before Ulysses, who ate and drank ravenously, for it was long since he had had food of any kind. Meanwhile, Nausicaa bethought her of another matter. She got the linen folded and placed in the wagon. She then yoked the mules, and as she took her seat, she she called Ulysses. "Stranger," said she, "rise and let us be going back to the town. I will introduce you at the house of my excellent father, where I can tell you that you will meet all the best people among the Phaeacians. But be sure and do as I bid you, for you seem to be a sensible person. As long as we are going past the fields and farmlands, follow briskly behind the wagon along with the maids, and I will lead the way myself. Presently, however, we shall come to the town, where you will find a high wall running all round it, and a good harbour on either side with a narrow entrance into the city, and the ships will be drawn up by the roadside, for everyone has a place where his own ship can lie. You will see the marketplace, with the temple of Neptune in the middle of it, and paved with large stones bedded in the earth. Here people deal in ship's gear of all kinds, such as cables and sails, and here too are the places where oars are made, for the Phaeacians are not a nation of archers. They know nothing about bows and arrows, but are a seafaring folk, and pride themselves on their masts, oars, and ships, with which they travel far over the sea. I am afraid of the gossip and scandal that may be set on foot against me later on, for the people here are very ill-natured, and some low fellow, if he met us, might say, 'Who is this fine-looking stranger that is going about with Nausicaa? Where did she find him? I suppose she is going to marry him. Perhaps he is a vagabond sailor, whom she has taken from some foreign vessel, for we have no neighbours. Or some god has at last come down from heaven in answer to her prayers, and she is going to live with him all the rest of her life. It would be a good thing if she would take herself off and find a husband somewhere else, for she will not look at one of the many excellent young Phaeacians who are in love with her.' This is the kind of disparaging remark that would be made about me, and I could not complain, for I should myself be scandalized at seeing any other girl do the like, and go about with men in spite of everybody, while her father and mother were still alive, and without having been married in the face of all the world. If, therefore, you want my father to give you an escort, and to help you home, do as I bid you. You will see a beautiful grove of poplars by the roadside, dedicated to Minerva. It has a well in it, and a meadow all around it. Here my father has a field of rich garden ground, about as far from the town as a man's voice will carry. Sit down there and wait for a while till the rest of us can get into the town and reach my father's house. Then, when you think we must have done this, come into the town and ask the way to the house of my father, Alcinous. You will have no difficulty in finding it. Any child will point it out to you, for no one else in the whole town has anything like such a fine house as he has. When you have got past the gates and through the outer court, go right across the inner court till you come to my mother. You will find her sitting by the fire and spinning her purple wool by firelight. It is a fine sight to see her, as she leans back against one of the bearing posts, with her maids all ranged behind her. Close to her seat stands that of my father, on which he sits and topes like an immortal god. Never mind him, but go up to my mother, and lay your hands upon her knees, if you would get home quickly. If you can gain her over, you may hope to see your own country again, no matter how distant it may be." So saying, she lashed the mules with her whip, and they left the river. The mules drew well, and their hoofs went up and down upon the road. She was careful not to go too fast for Ulysses and the maids who were following on foot along with the wagon, so she plied her whip with judgment. As the sun was going down, they came to the sacred grove of Minerva, and there Ulysses sat down and prayed to the mighty daughter of Jove. "Hear me," he cried, daughter of aegis-bearing Jove, unweariable. Hear me now, for you gave no heed to my prayers when Neptune was wrecking me. Now therefore have pity upon me, and grant that I may find friends, and be hospitably received by the Phaeacians. Thus did he pray, and Minerva heard his prayer, but she would not show herself to him openly, for she was afraid of her uncle Neptune, who was still furious in his endeavours to prevent Ulysses from getting home. End of Book 6. Recorded by Gazina in January 2007.
The Odyssey by Homer, translated by Samuel Butler, Book 7. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Book 7. Reception of Ulysses at the Palace of King Alcinous. Thus then did Ulysses wait and pray, but the girl drove on to the town. When she reached her father's house, she drew up at the gateway, and her brothers, comely as the gods, gathered round her, took the mules out of the wagon, and carried the clothes into the house, while she went to her own room, where an old servant, Eurymedusa of Aperia, lit the fire for her. This old woman had been brought by sea from Aperia, and had been chosen as a prize for Alcinous, because he was king over the Phaeacians, and the people obeyed him as though he were a god. She had been nursed to Nausicaa, and had now lit the fire for her, and brought her supper for her in her own room. Presently Ulysses got up to go towards town, and Minerva shed a thick mist all round him to hide him in case of the proud Phaeacians, who met him, should be rude to him, or ask him who he was. Then, as he was just entering the town, she came towards him in the likeness of a little girl carrying a pitcher. She stood right in front of him, and Ulysses said, "My dear, will you be so kind as to show me the house of King Alcinous? I am an unfortunate foreigner in distress, and do not know one in your town and country." Then Minerva said, "Yes, father stranger, I will show you the house you want, for Alcinous lives quite close to my own father. I will go before you and show you the way, but say not a word as you go, and do not look at any man, nor ask him questions, for the people here cannot abide strangers, and do not like men who come from some other place. They are a seafaring folk, and sail the seas by the grace of Neptune in ships that glide along, like thought, or as a bird in the air." On this she led the way, and Ulysses followed in her steps, but not one of the Phaeacians could see him as he passed through the city in the midst of them, for the great goddess Minerva, in her goodwill towards him, had hidden him in a thick cloud of darkness. He admired their harbours, ships, places of assembly, and lofty walls of the city, which, with the palisade on top of them, were very striking, and when they reached the king's house, Minerva said, "This is the house, father stranger, which you would have me show you. You will find a number of great people sitting at table, but do not be afraid, go straight in. For the bolder a man is, the more likely he is to carry his point, even though he is a stranger. First find the queen, her name is Arete, and she comes of the same family as her husband, Alcinous. They both descend originally from Neptune, who was father to Nausicaa, by Periboea, a woman of great beauty. Periboea was the youngest daughter of Eurymedon, who at one time reigned over all the giants, but he ruined his ill-fated people and lost his own life to boot. Neptune, however, lay with his daughter, and she had a son by him, the great Nausithous, who reigned over the Phaeacians. Nausithous had two sons, Rhexenor and Alcinous. Apollo killed the first of them while he was still a bridegroom and without male issue, but he left a daughter Arete, whom Alcinous married, and honors as no other woman is honored of all those that keep house along with their husbands. Thus she both was, and still is, respected beyond measure by her children, by Alcinous himself, and by the whole people who look upon her as a goddess, and greet her wherever she goes about the city, for she is a thoroughly good woman both in head and heart. And when any women are friends of hers, she will help their husbands so to settle their disputes. If you can gain her goodwill, you may have every hope of seeing your friends again and getting safely back to your home and country. Then Minerva left Scheria and went away over the sea. She went to Marathon and to the spacious streets of Athens, where she entered the abode of Erechtheus. But Ulysses went on to the house of Alcinous, and he pondered much as he paused a while before reaching the threshold of bronze, for the splendor of the palace was like that of the sun or moon. The walls on either side were of bronze from end to end, and the cornice was of blue enamel. The doors were gold and hung on pillars of silver that rose from the floor of bronze, while the lintel was silver and the hook of the door was gold. On either side there stood gold and silver mastiffs, which Vulcan, with his consummate skill, had fashioned expressly to keep watch over the palace of King Alcinous. So they were immortal and could never grow old. Seats were ranged all along the wall, here and there from one end to the other, with coverings of fine woven work which the woman of the house had made. Here the chief persons of the Phaeacians used to sit and eat and drink, for there was abundance at all seasons. And there were golden figures of young men with lighted torches in their hands, raised on pedestals to give light by night to those who were at table. There are 50 maidservants in the house, some of whom are always grinding rich yellow grain at the mill, while others work at the loom or sit and spin, and their shuttles go backwards and forwards like the fluttering of aspen leaves, while the linen is so closely woven that it will turn oil. As the Phaeacians are the best sailors in the world, so their women excel all others in weaving, for Minerva has taught them all manner of useful arts, and they are very intelligent. Outside the gate of the outer court there is a large garden of about 4 acres with a wall all round it. It is full of beautiful trees, pears, pomegranates, and the most delicious apples. There are luscious figs also, and olives in full growth. The fruits never rot nor fail all year round, neither winter nor summer, for the air is so soft that a new crop ripens before the old is dropped. Pear grows on pear, apple on apple, and fig on fig, and so also with the grapes, for there is an excellent vineyard. On the level ground of a part of this, the grapes are being made into raisins. In another part they are being gathered. Some are being trodden in the wine tubs, others further on have shed their blossom and are beginning to show fruit, others again are just changing color. In the furthest part of the ground there are beautifully arranged beds of flowers that are in bloom all year round. 2 streams go through it, the one turned in ducts throughout the whole garden, while the other is carried under ground of the outer court of the house itself, and the townspeople draw water from it. Such then were the splendors with which the gods had endowed the house of King Alcinous. So here Ulysses stood for a while and looked about him. But when he looked long enough, he crossed the threshold and went within the precincts of the house. There he found all the chief people among the Phaeacians making their drink offerings to Mercury, which they always did last thing before going away for the night. He went straight through the court, still hidden by the cloak of darkness in which Minerva had enveloped him, till he reached Arete and King Alcinous. Then he laid his hands upon the knees of the queen, and at the moment the miraculous darkness fell away from him, and he became visible. Everyone was speechless with surprise at seeing a man there, but Ulysses began at once with his petition. "Queen Arete," he exclaimed, "daughter of great Rhexenor, in my distress I humbly pray you, as also your husband and these your guests, whom may heaven prosper with long life and happiness, and may they leave their possessions to their children, and all the honors conferred upon them by the state, to help me home to my own country as soon as possible, for I have been long in trouble and away from my friends." Then he sat down on the hearth among the ashes, and they all held their peace till presently the old hero Echinus, who was an excellent speaker and an elder among the Phaeacians, plainly and in all honesty addressed them thus. "Alcinous," he said, "it is not creditable to you that a stranger should be seen sitting among the ashes of your hearth. Everyone is waiting to hear what you are about to say. Tell him then to rise and take a seat on a stool inlaid with silver, and bid your servants mix some wine and water, that we may drink an offering to Jove, the Lord of Thunder, who takes all well-disposed suppliants under his protection. And let the housekeeper give him some supper of whatever there may be in the house. When Alcinous heard this, he took Ulysses by the hand, raised him from the hearth, and bade him take the seat of Laodamas, who had been sitting beside him, and was his favorite son. A maidservant then brought him water in a beautiful golden ewer, and poured it in a silver basin for him to wash his hands, and she drew a clean table beside him. An upper servant brought him bread, and offered him many good things of what there was in the house, and Ulysses ate and drank. Then Alcinous said to one of the servants, Pontonous, mix a cup of wine, and hand it round, that we may drink offerings to Jove, the Lord of Thunder, who is the protector of all well-disposed suppliants. Pontonous then mixed wine and water, and handed it round, after giving every man his drinking offering. Then they made their offerings, and drunk each as much as he was minded. Alcinous said, Aldermen and town councillors of the Phaeacians, hear my words. You have had your supper, so now go home to bed. Tomorrow morning I shall invite a still larger number of aldermen, and will give a sacrificial banquet in honor of our guest. We can then discuss the question of his escort, and consider how we may at once send him back rejoicing to his own country, without trouble or inconvenience to himself, no matter how distant it may be. We must see that he comes to no harm while on his homeward journey, but when he is once at home, he will have to take the luck he was born with, for better or for worse, like other people. It is possible, however, that the stranger is one of the immortals who has come down from heaven to visit us. But in this case the gods are departing from their usual practice, for hitherto they have made themselves perfectly clear to us when we have been offering them hecatombs. They come and sit at our feast just like one of ourselves, and if any solitary wayfarer happens to stumble upon some or other of them, they affect no concealment, for we are as near of kin to the gods as the Cyclopses and the savage giants are. Then Ulysses said, Pray, Alcinous, do not take any such notion into your head. I have nothing of the immortal about me, neither in my body nor mind, and most resemble those among you who are the most afflicted. Indeed, were I to tell you all that heaven has seen fit to lay upon me, you would say that I was still worse off than they are. Nevertheless, let me sup in spite of sorrow, for an empty stomach is a very inopportune thing, and thrusts itself on a man's notice no matter how dire is his distress. I am in great trouble, yet it insists that I shall eat and drink, bids me lay aside all memory of my sorrows, and dwell only on the due replenishing of itself. As for yourselves, do as you propose, and at break of day set about helping me to get home. I shall be content to die if I may first once more behold my property, my bondsmen, and all the greatness of my house. Thus did he speak. Everyone approved his saying, and agreed that he should have his escort, inasmuch as he had spoken reasonably. Then, when they made their drink offerings, and had drunk each as much as he was minded, they went home to bed, every man in his own abode, leaving Ulysses in the cloister with Arete and Alcinous, while the servants were taking the things away after supper. Arete was the first to speak, for she recognized the shirt, cloak, and good clothes that Ulysses was wearing, as the work of herself and of her maids. So she said, Stranger, before we go any further, there is a question I should like to ask you. Who and whence are you? And who gave you those clothes? Did you not say you had come from beyond the sea? And Ulysses answered, It would be a long story, madam, were I to relate in full the tale of my misfortunes, for the hand of heaven has been laid heavy upon me. But as regards your question, there is an island far away in the sea which is called the Ogygian. Here dwells the cunning and powerful goddess Calypso, daughter of Atlas. She lives by herself, far from all neighbors, human or divine. Fortune, however, brought me to her hearth, all desolate and alone, for Jove struck my ship with his thunderbolts and broke it up in mid-ocean. My brave comrades were drowned, every man of them, but I stuck to the keel, and was carried hither and thither for the space of 9 days, till at last, during the darkness of the 10th night, the gods brought me to the Ogygian island, where the great goddess Calypso lives. She took me in and treated me with the utmost kindness. Indeed, she wanted to make me immortal that I might never grow old, but she could not persuade me to let her do so. I stayed with Calypso 7 years straight on end and watered the good clothes she gave me with my tears during the whole time. But at last, when the 8th year came round, she bade me depart of her own free will, either because Jove had told her she must, or because she had changed her mind. She sent me from her island on a raft, which she provisioned with abundance of bread and wine. Moreover, she gave me good stout clothing, and sent me a wind that blew warm and fair. Days 7 and 10 did I sail over the sea, and on the 18th I caught sight of the first outlines of the mountains upon your coast, and glad indeed was I to set eyes upon them. Nevertheless, there was still much trouble in store for me, for at this point Neptune would let me go no further, and raised a great storm against me. The sea was so terribly high that I could no longer keep my raft, which went to pieces under the fury of the gale, and I had to swim for it till wind and current brought me to your shores. There I tried to land, but could not, for it was a bad place, and the waves dashed me against the rocks. So I again took to the sea and swam on till I came to a river that seemed the most likely landing place, for there were no rocks and it was sheltered from the wind. Here then I got out of the water and gathered my senses together again. Night was coming on, so I left the river and went into a thicket where I covered myself all over with leaves, and presently heaven sent me off into a very deep sleep. Sick and sorry I slept among the leaves all night, and through the next day till afternoon, when I woke as the sun was westering, and saw your daughter's maidservants playing upon the beach, and your daughter among them looking like a goddess. I besought her aid, and she proved to be of excellent disposition, much more so than could be expected from so young a person, for young people are apt to be thoughtless. She gave me plenty of bread and wine, and when she had me washed in the river, she also gave me the clothes in which you see me. Now, therefore, though it has pained me to do so, I have told you the whole truth. Then Alcinous said, Stranger, it was very wrong of my daughter not to bring you on at once to my house along with the maids, seeing that she was the first person whose aid you asked. Pray do not scold her, replied Ulysses. She is not to blame. She did tell me to follow along with the maids, but I was ashamed and afraid, for I thought you might perhaps be displeased if you saw me. Every human being is sometimes a little suspicious and irritable. Stranger, replied Alcinous, I am not the kind of man to get angry about nothing. It is always better to be reasonable, but by Father Jove, Minerva, and Apollo, now that I see what kind of person you are, and how much you think as I do, I wish you would stay here, marry my daughter, and become my son-in-law. If you will stay, I will give you a house and an estate, but no one, heaven forbid, shall keep you here against your own wish. And that you may be sure of this, I will attend tomorrow to the matter of your escort. You can sleep during the whole voyage if you like, and the men shall sail you over smooth waters either to your own home or wherever you please, even though it may be a long way further off than Euboea, which those of my people who saw it when they took yellow-haired Rhadamanthus to see Tityus, the son of Gaia, tell me is the furthest of any place. And yet they did the whole voyage in a single day without distressing themselves, and came back again afterwards. You will thus see how much my ships excel all others, and what magnificent oarsmen my sailors are. Then Ulysses was glad, and prayed aloud, saying, Father Jove, grant that Alcinous may do all that he has said, for he so will win an imperishable name among mankind, and at the same time I shall return to my country. Thus did they converse. Then Arete told her maids to set a bed in the room that was in the gatehouse, and make it with good red rugs, and to spread coverlets on the top of them with woolen cloaks for Ulysses to wear. The maids thereon went out with torches in their hands, and when they had made their bed, they came up to Ulysses and said, Rise, sir stranger, and come with us, for your bed is ready. And glad indeed was he to go to his rest. So Ulysses slept in a bed placed in a room over the echoing gateway, but Alcinous lay in the inner part of the house with the queen, his wife, by his side. End of Ulysses, Book 7.
This is the LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Odyssey by Homer, translated by Samuel Butler, Book 8. Banquet in the House of Alcinous. The Games. Now when the child of morning, rosy-fingered dawn appeared, Alcinous and Ulysses both rose. Alcinous led the way to the Phaeacian place of assembly, which was near the ships. When they got there, they sat down side by side on a seat of polished stone, while Minerva took the form of one of Alcinous' servants, and went round the town in order to help Ulysses to get home. She went up to the citizens, man by man, and said, "Aldermen and town councilors of the Phaeacians, come to the assembly, all of you, and listen to the stranger who has just come off a long voyage to the house of King Alcinous. He looks like an immortal god." With these words, she made them all want to come, and they flocked to the assembly, till seats and standing room were alike crowded. Every one was struck with the appearance of Ulysses, for Minerva had beautified him about the head and shoulders, making him look taller and stouter than he really was, that he might impress the Phaeacians favorably as being a very remarkable man, and might come off well in the many trials of skill to which they were challenging. Then, when they were all got together, Alcinous spoke. "Hear me," said he, "aldermen and town councilors of the Phaeacians, that I may speak even as I am minded. This stranger, whoever he may be, has found his way to my house from somewhere or other, east or west. He wants an escort and wishes to have the matter settled. Let us then get one ready for him, as we have done for others before him. Indeed, no one has ever yet come to my house who has been able to complain of me not speeding him on his way soon enough. Let us draw a ship into the sea, one that has never yet made a voyage, and man her with 52 of our smartest young sailors. Then, when you have made fast the oars, each by his own seat, leave the ship, and come to my house to prepare a feast. I will find you and everything. I am giving these instructions to the young men who will form the crew. For as regards you aldermen and town councilors, you will join me in entertaining our guests in the cloisters. I can take no excuses, and we will have Demodocus to sing for us, for there is no bard like him, whatever he may choose to sing about." Alcinous then led the way, and the others followed after, while a servant went to fetch Demodocus. The 52 picked oarsmen went to the seashore as they had been told, and when they got there, they threw the ship into the water, got her mast and sails inside her, bound the oars to the thole-pins with twisted thongs of leather, all in due course, and spread the white sails aloft. They moored the vessel a little way out from land, and then came on shore and went to the house of King Alcinous. The outhouses, yards, and all the precincts were filled with crowds of men in great multitudes, both old and young, and Alcinous killed them 12 sheep, 8 full-grown pigs, and 2 oxen. These were skinned and dressed so as to provide a magnificent banquet. The servant presently led in the famous bard Demodocus, whom the Muse had dearly loved, but to whom she had given both good and evil. For though she had endowed him with a divine gift of song, she had robbed him of his eyesight. Pontonous set a seat for him among the guests, leading it up against a bearing post. He hung the lyre for him on a peg over his head, and showed him where he was to feel for it with his hands. He also set a fair table with a basket of victuals by his side, and a cup of wine from which he might drink whenever he was so disposed. The company then laid their hands upon the good things that were before them, but as soon as they had enough to eat and drink, the Muse inspired Demodocus to sing the feats of heroes, and more especially a matter that was in the mouths of all men, to wit, the quarrel between Achilles and Ulysses, and the fierce words that they heaped on one another as they sat together at a banquet. But Agamemnon was glad when he heard his chieftains quarreling with one another, for Apollo had foretold this at Pytho, when he crossed the stone floor to consult the oracle. Here was the beginning of the evil that was by the will of Jove fell upon the Danaans and Trojans. Thus sang the bard, but Ulysses drew his purple mantle over his head and covered his face, for he was ashamed to let the Phaeacians see that he was weeping. When the bard left off singing, he wiped his tears from his eyes, uncovered his face, and taking his cup, made a drink offering to the gods. But when the Phaeacians pressed Demodocus to sing further, for they delighted in his lays, then Ulysses again drew his mantle over his head and wept bitterly. No one noticed his distress except Alcinous, who was sitting near him and heard the heavy sighs that he was heaving. So he at once said, Aldermen and town councilors of the Phaeacians, we have had enough now, both of the feast and of the minstrelsy, that is its due accompaniment. Let us proceed therefore to the athletic sports, so that our guest on his return home may be able to tell his friends how much we surpass all other nations as boxers, wrestlers, jumpers, and runners. With these words he led the way, and the others followed after. A servant hung Demodocus's lyre on its peg for him, and led him out of the cloister, and set him on the same way as that along which all the chief men of the Phaeacians were going to see the sports. A crowd of several thousands of people followed him, and there were many excellent competitors for all the prizes. Acronios, Acalius, Alatrius, Nateus, Primnius, Anchialus, Aretnius, Pontius, Furius, Thune, Anabesius, and Amphilius, son of Polonius, son of Tecton. There were also Aurelius, son of Naubolus, who was like Mars himself, and was the best-looking man among the Phaeacians, except Laodamas. 3 sons of Alcinous, Laodamas, Alios, and Clytonius, competed also. Foot races came first. The course was set out for them from the starting post, and they raised dust upon the plain as they all flew forward at the same moment. Clytonius came in first, a long way. He left everyone else behind him by the length of the furrow that a couple of mules could plow in a fallow field. They then turned to the painful art of wrestling, and here Euryalus proved to be the best man. Amphilius excelled all the others in jumping, while at throwing the disc there was no one who could approach Alatrius. Alcinous' son, Laodamas, was the best boxer, and he it was who presently said, when they had all been diverted with the games, Let us ask the stranger whether he excels in any of these sports. He seems very powerfully built. His thighs, calves, hands, and neck are all of prodigious strength. Nor is he at all old, but he has suffered much lately, and there is nothing like the sea for making havoc with a man, no matter how strong he is. You're quite right, Laodamas, replied Euryalus. Go up to your guest and speak to him about it yourself. When Laodamas heard this, he made his way into the middle of the crowd and said to Ulysses, I hope, sir, that you will enter yourself for some one or other of our competitions, if you are skilled in any of them, and you must have gone in for many a one before now. There is nothing that does anyone so much credit all his life long as the showing himself a proper man with his hands and feet. Have a try, therefore, at something, and banish all sorrow from your mind. Your return home will not be long delayed, for the ship is already drawn into the water, and the crew is found. Ulysses answered, Laodamas, why do you taunt me in this way? My mind is set rather on cares than contests. I have been through infinite trouble, and come among you now as a suppliant, praying your king and people to further me on my return home. Then Euryalus, reviling him outright, said, I gather then you are unskilled in any of the many sports that men generally delight in. I suppose that you are one of those grasping traders that go about in ships, as captains or merchants, and who think of nothing but their outward freights and homeward cargoes. That does not seem to be much of the athlete about you. For shame, sir, answered Ulysses fiercely. You are an insolent fellow. So true is it that the gods do not grace all men alike in speech, person, and understanding. One man may be weak of presence, but heaven has adorned this with such a good conversation that he charms everyone who sees him. His honeyed moderation carries his hearers with him, so that he is a leader in all assemblies of his fellows. Wherever he goes he is looked upon to. Another may be as handsome as a god, but his good looks are not crowned with discretion. This is your case. No god could make a finer looking fellow than you are, but you are a fool. Your ill-judged remarks have made me exceedingly angry, and you are quite mistaken, for I excel in a great many athletic exercises. Indeed, so long as I had youth and strength, I was among the first athletes of the age. Now, however, I am worn out by labor and sorrow, for I have gone through much, both on the field of battle and by the waves of the sea. Still, in spite of all this, I will compete, for your taunts have stung me to the quick. So he hurried up, without even taking his cloak off, and seized the disc, larger, more massive, and much heavier than those used by the Phaeacians when disc-throwing among themselves. Then, swinging it back, he threw it from his brawny hand, and made a humming sound in the air as he did so. The Phaeacians quailed beneath the rushing of its flight as it sped gracefully from his hand and flew beyond any mark that had been made yet. Minerva, in the form of a man, came and marked the place where it had been fallen. A blind man, sir, said she, could easily tell your mark by groping for it. It is so far ahead of any other. You may make your mind easy about this contest, for no Phaeacian can come near to such a throw as yours. Ulysses was glad when he had found a friend among the onlookers, for he had begun to speak more pleasantly. Young men, said he, come up to that throw if you can, and I will throw another disc as heavy, or even heavier. If anyone wants to have a bout with me, let him come on, for I am exceedingly angry. I will box, wrestle, or run. I do not care what it is, for any man among you, all except Laodamas, but not with him, because I am his guest, and one cannot compete with one's own personal friend. At least I do not think it a prudent or sensible thing for a guest to challenge his host's family at any game, especially when he is in a foreign country. He will cut the ground from under his own feet if he does. But I will make no exception as regards anyone else, for I want to have the matter out and know which is the best man. I am a good hand at every kind of athletic sport known among mankind. I am an excellent archer. In battle I am always the first to bring a man down with my arrow, no matter how many more are taking aim at him alongside of me. Philoctetes was the only man who could shoot better than me when we Achaeans were before Troy and in practice. I far excel everyone else in the whole world of those who still eat bread upon the face of the earth. But I should not like to shoot against the mighty deed, such as Hercules, or Erictus, the Oechalian, men who could shoot against the gods themselves. This, in fact, is how Euryctus came prematurely by his end, for Apollo was angry with him and killed him because he challenged him as an archer. I can throw a dart faster than anyone else can shoot an arrow. Running is the only point in respect of which I am afraid some of the Phoenicians might beat me, for I have been brought down very low at sea. My provisions run short, and therefore I am still weak. They all held their peace, except King Alcinous, who began, Sir, we have had much pleasure in hearing all that you have told us, from which I understand that you are willing to show your prowess, as having been displeased with some of our insolent remarks that have been made to you by one of our athletes, and which could never have been uttered by anyone who knows how to talk with propriety. I hope you will apprehend my meaning, and will explain to any one of your chief men who may be dining with yourself and your family when you get home, that we have an hereditary aptitude for accomplishments of all kinds. We are not particularly remarkable for our boxing, nor yet as wrestlers, but we are singularly fleet of foot and are excellent sailors. We are extremely fond of good dinners, music, and dancing. We also like frequent changes of linen, warm baths, and good beds. So now, please, some of you who are the best dancers set about dancing, that our guest on his return home may be able to tell his friends how much we surpass all other nations as sailors, runners, dancers, and minstrels. Demodocus has left his lyre at my house, so run some one or other of you and fetch it for him. On this, a servant hurried off to bring the lyre from the king's house, and the 9 men who had been chosen as stewards stood forward. It was their business to manage everything connected with the sports, so they made the ground smooth and marked a white space for the dancers. Presently the servant came back with Demodocus's lyre, and he took his place in the midst of them. Whereupon the best young dancers in the town began to foot and trip it so nimbly that Ulysses was delighted with the merry twinkling of their feet. Meanwhile, the bard had begun to sing the loves of Venus and Mars, and how they first began their intrigue in the house of Vulcan. Mars made Venus many presents, and defiled King Vulcan's marriage bed. So the sun, who saw what they were about, told Vulcan. Vulcan was very angry when he heard such dreadful news. So he went to his smithy, brooding mischief, got his great anvil into its place, and began to forge some chains which none could unloose or break, so that they might stay in that place. When he had finished his snare, he went off to his bedroom, and festooned the bedposts all over with chains like cobwebs. He also let many hang down from the great beam of the ceiling. Not even a god could see them, so fine and subtle were they. As soon as he had spread the chains all over the bed, he made as though he were setting off for the fair state of Lemnos, which of all places in the world was the one he was the most fond of. But Mars kept no blind lookout, and as soon as he saw him start, hurried off to his house, burning with love for Venus. Now Venus had just come in from a visit to her father Jove, and was sitting down when Mars came inside the house and said, as he took her hand into his own, "Let us go to the couch of Vulcan. He is not at home, but has gone off to Lemnos, among the Sintians, whose speech is barbarous." She was nothing loath, so they went to the couch to take their rest, whereupon they were caught in the toils which cunning Vulcan had spread for them, and could neither get up nor stir hand or foot, but found too late that they were in a trap. Then Vulcan came up to them, for he had turned back before reaching Lemnos, when his scout the sun told him what was going on. He was in a furious passion, and stood in the vestibule making a dreadful noise as he shouted to all the gods. "Father Jove," he cried, "and all you other blessed gods who live forever, come here and see the ridiculous and disgraceful sight which I will show you. Jove's daughter, Venus, is always dishonoring me because I am lame. She is in love with Mars, who is handsome and clean built, whereas I am a cripple. But my parents are to blame for that, not I. They ought never to have begotten me. Come and see the pair together asleep on my bed. It makes me furious to look at them. They are very fond of one another, but I do not think that they will lie there longer than they can help, nor do I think that they will sleep much. There, however, they will stay till her father has repaid me the sum I gave him for his baggage of a daughter, who is fair but not honest." On this the gods gathered to the house of Vulcan. Earth encircling Neptune came, and Mercury, the bringer of luck, and King Apollo, but the goddesses stayed at home, all of them, for shame. Then the giver of all good things stood in the doorway, and the blessed gods roared with inextinguishable laughter as they saw how cunning Vulcan had been. Whereon one would turn towards his neighbor, saying, "Ill deeds do not prosper, and the weak is confound the strong. See how limping Vulcan, lame as he is, has caught Mars, who is the fleetest god in heaven, and now Mars will be caught, cast in heavy damages." Thus did they converse. The king Apollo said to Mercury, "Messenger Mercury, giver of good things, you would not care how strong the chains were, would you, if you could sleep with Venus?" "King Apollo," answered Mercury, "I only wish I might get the chance, though there were 3 times as many chains, and you might look on, all of you, gods and goddesses, but I would sleep with her if I could." The immortal gods burst out laughing as they heard him, but Neptune took it all seriously, and kept imploring Vulcan to set Mars free again. "Let him go," he cried, "and I will undertake, as you require, that he shall pay you all the damages that you are held responsible among the immortal gods." "Do not," replied Vulcan, "ask me to do this. Bad man's bond is bad security. What remedy could I enforce against you if Mars should go away and leave his debts behind him, along with his chains?" "Vulcan," said Neptune, "if Mars goes away without repaying his damages, I will pay you myself." So Vulcan answered, "In this case, I cannot and must not refuse you." Thereon he loosed the bonds that bound them, and as soon as they were free they scampered off, Mars to Thrace, and the laughter-loving Venus to Cyprus, and to Paphos, where is her grove and her altar fragrant with burnt offerings. Here the Graces bathed her, and anointed her with oil of ambrosia, such as the immortal gods would make use of, and they clothed her in raiment of the most enchanting beauty. Thus sang the bard, and both Ulysses and the seafaring Phaeacians were charmed as they heard him. Then Alcinous told Laodamas and Helios to dance alone, for there was no one to compete with them. So they took a red ball, which Polybius had made for them, and one of them bent himself backwards and threw it up towards the clouds, while the other jumped from off the ground and caught it with ease before it came down again. When they had done throwing the ball straight up into the air, they began to dance, and at the same time kept on throwing it backwards and forwards to one another, while all the young men in the ring applauded and made a great stamping of their feet. Then Ulysses said, "King Alcinous, you said your people were the nimblest dancers in the world, and so indeed they have proved themselves to be so. I am astonished, even as I saw them." The king was delighted at all this, and explained to the Phaeacians, "Aldermen and town councilors, our guest seems to be a person of singular judgment. Let us give him proof of our hospitality, as he may reasonably expect. There are 12 chief men among you, and counting myself, there are 13. Contribute, each of you, a clean cloak, a shirt, and a talent of fine gold. Let us give him all this and a lump down at once, so that when he gets his supper he may do so with a light heart. As for Euryalus, he will have to make a formal apology, and a present too, for he has been rude. Thus did he speak. The others, all of them, applauded him, and sent their servants to fetch presents. Then Euryalus said, King Alcinous, I will give the stranger all the satisfaction you require. He shall have my sword, which is of bronze, all but the hilt, which is of silver. I will also give him the scabbard, which is newly sawn ivory into which it fits. It will be worth a great deal to him. As he spoke, he placed the sword in the hand of Ulysses and said, Good luck to you, fine stranger. If anything has been said amiss, may the winds blow it away with that, and may heaven grant you a safe return, for I understand you have been a long way away from home, and have gone through much hardship. To which Ulysses answered, Good luck to you too, my friends, and may the gods grant you every happiness. I hope you will not miss the sword you are giving me along with your apology. With these words he girded the sword about his shoulders, and towards sundown the presents began to make their appearance, as the servants of the donors kept bringing them to the house of King Alcinous. Hera's sons received them and placed them under their mother's charge. Then Alcinous led the way to the house and bade his guests take their seats. Wife, said he, turning to Queen Arete, go, fetch the best chest we have, and put a clean cloak and shirt in it. Also set a copper on the fire and heat some water. Our guests will take a warm bath. See also to the careful packing of the presents that the noble Phaeacians have made him. He will thus better enjoy both his supper and the singing that will follow. I shall myself give him this golden goblet, which is of exquisite workmanship, and he may be reminded of me for the rest of his life, whenever he makes a drink offering to Jove or to any of the gods. Then Arete told her maids to set a large tripod upon the fire as fast as they could, whereon they set a tripod full of bath water onto a clear fire. They threw on sticks to make a blaze, and when the water became hot, as the flame played upon the belly of the tripod. Meanwhile, Arete brought a magnificent chest from her own room, and inside it she packed all the beautiful presents of gold and the raiment which the Phaeacians had brought. Lastly, she added a cloak and a good shirt from Alcinous, and said to Ulysses, See to the lid yourself, and have the whole bound round at once, for fear anyone should rob you, by the way when you are asleep in your ship. When Ulysses heard this, he put the lid on the chest, and made it fast with the bond that Circe had taught him. He had done so before an upper servant told him to come to the bath and wash himself. He was very glad of a warm bath, for he had no one to wait upon him ever since he had left the house of Calypso, who was, as long as he remained with her, had taken as good a care of him as though he had been a god. When the servants had done washing and anointing him with oil, and had given him a clean cloak and shirt, he left the bathroom and joined the guests who were sitting over their wine. Lovely Nausicaa stood by one of the bearing posts, supporting the roof of the cloister, and admiring him as she saw him pass. Farewell, stranger, said she. Do not forget me when you are safe at home again, for it is to me first that you owe a ransom for having saved your life. And Ulysses said, Nausicaa, daughter of the great Alcinous, may Jove, the mighty husband of Juno, grant that I may reach my home, so I shall bless you as my guardian angel all my days, for it was you who saved me. When he had said this, he seated himself beside Alcinous. Supper was then served, and the wine was mixed for drinking. The servant led the favorite bard Demodocus, and set him in the midst of the company, near one of the bearing posts, supporting the cloister that he may lean against it. Then Ulysses cut off a piece of roast pork with plenty of fat, for there was abundance left on the joint, and said to a servant, Take this piece of pork over to Demodocus, and tell him to eat it. For all the pain his lays may cause me, I will salute him nonetheless. Bards are honored and respected throughout the world, for the muse teaches them their songs and loves them. The servant carried the pork in his fingers over to Demodocus, who took it and was very much pleased. They then laid their hands on all the good things that were before them, and as soon as they had to eat and drink, Ulysses said to Demodocus, Demodocus, there was no one in the world whom I admire more than I do you. You must have studied under the Muse, Jove's daughter, and under Apollo. So accurately you sing of the return of the Achaeans, with all of their sufferings and adventures. If you were not there yourself, you must have heard it all from someone who was. Now, however, change your song, and tell us of the wooden horse, which Epeus made with the assistance of Minerva, and which Ulysses got by stratagem into the fort of Troy, after freighting it with the men who afterwards sacked the city. If you will sing this tale aright, I will tell all the world how magnificently heaven has endowed you. The bard was inspired of heaven, took up the story at the point where some of the Argives set fire to their tents and sailed away, while others, hidden within the horse, were waiting with Ulysses in the Trojan place of assembly. For the Trojans themselves had drawn the horse into their fortress, and it stood there while they sat at council round it, and they were in 3 minds as to what they should do. Some were for breaking it out then and there. Others would have it dragged to the top of the rock on which the fortress stood and then thrown down the precipice, while yet others were for letting it remain as an offering, propitiation for the gods. And this was how they settled it in the end, for the city was doomed when he took in that horse, within which were all the bravest of the Argives, waiting to bring death and destruction to the Trojans. Anon he sang how the sons of the Achaeans issued from the horse and sacked the town, breaking out from their ambuscade. He sang how they overran the city hither and thither and ravaged it, and how Ulysses went raging like Mars along with Menelaus to the house of Deiphobus. It was there that the fight raged most furiously. Nevertheless, by Minerva's help, he was victorious. All this he told, but Ulysses was overcome as he heard him, and his cheeks were wet with tears. He wept as a woman weeps when she throws herself on the body of her husband who has fallen before his own city and people, fighting bravely in defense of his home and children. She screams aloud and flings her arms about him as he lies gasping for breath and dying. But her enemies beat her from behind about the back and shoulders and carry her off into slavery, to a life of labor and sorrow, and the beauty fades from her cheeks. Even so piteously did Ulysses weep, but none of those present perceived his tears except Alcinous, who was sitting near him, and could hear the sobs and sighs that he was heaving. The king therefore at once rose and said, "Aldermen and town councilors of the Phaeacians, let Demodocus cease his song, for there are those present who do not seem to like it. From the moment that we have done supper, Demodocus began to sing. Our guest has been all the time groaning and lamenting. He is evidently in great trouble, so let the bard leave off, that we may all enjoy ourselves, host and guest alike. And this will be much as it should be, for all these festivities, with the escort and the presents that we are making with so much goodwill, are wholly in his honor. And anyone with even a moderate amount of right feeling knows that he ought to treat a guest and suppliant as though he were his own brother. Therefore, sir, do not on your part affect no more concealment, nor reserve in the matter about which I am about to ask you. It would be more polite in you to give me a plain answer. Tell me the name by which your father and mother over yonder used to call you, by which you were known among your neighbors and fellow citizens. There is no one, neither rich nor poor, who is absolutely without any name whatever, for people's fathers and mothers give them names as soon as they are born. Tell me also your country, nation, and city, that our ships may shape their purpose accordingly and take you there. For the Phaeacians have no pilots, their vessels have no rudders, as those of other nations have, but the ships themselves understand what it is we are thinking about and want. They know all the cities and countries in the whole world, and can traverse the sea just as well, even when it is covered with mist and cloud, so there is no danger of being wrecked or coming to any harm. Still, I do not remember hearing my father say that Neptune was angry with us for being too easygoing in the matter of giving people escorts. He said that one of these days he would wreck a ship of ours as it was returning from having escorted someone, and bury our city under a high mountain. This is what my father used to say, but whether the god will carry out his threat or no is a matter which he will decide for himself. And now tell me, and tell me true, where have you been wandering, and in what countries have you traveled? Tell us of the peoples themselves, and of their cities, who were hostile, savage, and uncivilized, and who, on the other hand, hospitable and humane. Tell us also why you are made so unhappy on hearing about the return of the Argive Danaans in Troy. The gods arranged all this and sent them their misfortunes in order that future generations might have something to sing about. Did you lose some brave kinsman, of your wives when you were before Troy, a son-in-law or father-in-law which are the nearest relations a man has outside his own flesh and blood? Or was it some brave and kindly-natured comrade, for a good friend is as dear to a man as his own brother? End of Book 8.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Reynard. The Odyssey by Homer. Translated by Samuel Butler. Book 9. Ulysses declares himself and begins his story. The Seacons, the Tophagy, and Cyclops. And Ulysses answered, King Alcinous, it is a good thing to hear a bard with such a divine voice as this man has. There is nothing better or more delightful than when a whole people make merry together, with the guests sitting orderly to listen, while the table is loaded with bread and meats, and the cupbearer draws wine and fills his cup for every man. This is indeed as fair a sight as a man can see. Now, however, since you are inclined to ask the story of my sorrows, and rekindle my own sad memories in respect of them, I do not know how to begin, nor yet how to continue and conclude my tale. For the hand of heaven has been laid heavily upon me. Firstly, then, I will tell you my name, that you too may know it, and one day, if I outlive this time of sorrow, may become my guests, though I live so far away from all of you. I am Ulysses, son of Laertes, renowned among mankind for all manner of subtlety, so that my fame ascends to heaven. I live in Ithaca, where there is a high mountain called Neritum, covered with forests, and not far from it there is a group of islands very near to one another, Lycia, Same, and the wooded island of Zakynthos. It lies squat on the horizon, all highest up in the sea toward the sunset, while the others lie away from it towards dawn. It is a rugged island, but it breeds brave men, and my eyes know none that they better love to look upon. The goddess Calypso kept me with her in her cave, and wanted me to marry her, as did also the cunning Aenean goddess Circe. But they can neither of them persuade me, for there is nothing dearer to a man than his own country and his parents, however splendid a home he may have in a foreign country. If it be far from father or mother, he does not care about it. Now, however, I will tell you of the many hazardous adventures which by Jove's will I met with on my return from Troy. When I had set sail thence, the wind took me first to Ismarus, which is the city of the Seacons. There I sacked the town and put the people to the sword. We took their wives and also much booty, which we divided equitably amongst us, so that none might have reason to complain. I then said that we had better make off at once, but my men very foolishly would not obey me, so they stayed there drinking much wine and killing great numbers of sheep and oxen on the seashore. Meanwhile, the Seacons cried out for help to other Seacons who lived inland. These were more in number and stronger, and they were more skilled in the art of war, for they could fight, either from chariots or on foot as the occasion served. In the morning, therefore, they came as thick as leaves and bloom in summer, and the hand of heaven was against us, so that we were hard pressed. They set the battle in array near the ships, and the hosts aimed their bronze-shod spears at one another. So long as the day waxed, and it was still morning, we held our own against them, though they were more in number than we. But as the sun went down, toward the time when men lose their oxen, the Seacons got the better of us, and we lost half a dozen men from every ship we had. So we got away with those that were left. Thence we sailed onward, with sorrow in our hearts, but glad to have escaped death, though we had lost our comrades. Nor did we leave till we had thrice invoked each one of the poor fellows who had perished by the hands of the Seacons. Then Jove raised the north wind against us, till it blew a hurricane, so that land and sky were hidden in thick clouds, and night sprang forth out of the heavens. We let the ships run before the gale, but the force of the wind tore our sails to tatters, so we took them down for fear of shipwreck, and rowed our hardest towards the land. There we lay 2 days and 2 nights, suffering much alike from toil and distress of mind. But on the morning of the 3rd day, we again raised our masts, set sail, and took our places, letting the wind and steersman direct our ship. I should have got home at that time unharmed, had not the north wind and the currents been against me, as I was doubling Cape Malaya, and set me off my course hard by the island of Cythera. I was driven hence by foul winds for a space of 9 days upon the sea. But on the 10th day we reached the land of the Lotus Eaters, who live on a food that comes from a kind of flower. Here we landed to take in fresh water, and our crews got their midday meal on the shore near the ships. When they had eaten and drunk, I sent 2 of my company to see what manner of men the people of the place might be, and they had a 3rd man under them. They started at once, and went about among the Lotus Eaters, who did them no hurt, but gave them to eat of the lotus, which was so delicious that those who ate of it left off caring about home, and did not even want to go back and say what had happened to them, but were for staying and munching lotus with the Lotus Eaters, without thinking further of their return. Nevertheless, though they wept bitterly, I forced them back to the ships, and made them fast under the benches. Then I told the rest to go on board at once, lest any of them should taste of the lotus, and leave off wanting to go home. So they took their places, and smote the grey sea with their oars. We sailed hence, always in much distress, till we came to the land of the lawless and inhuman Cyclops. Now the Cyclops neither plant nor plough, but trust in Providence, and live on such wheat, barley and grapes as grow wild, without any kind of tillage, and their wild grapes yield them wine as the sun and the rain may grow them. They have no laws, nor assemblies of the people, but live in caves on the tops of high mountains. Each is lord and master in his family, and they take no account of their neighbours. Now off their harbour there lies a wooded and fertile island, not quite close to the land of the Cyclops, but still not far. It is overrun with wild goats that breed there in great numbers, and are never disturbed by foot of man. For sportsmen, who as a rule will suffer so much hardship in forest or among mountain precipices, do not go there. Nor yet again is it ever ploughed or fed down, but it lies a wilderness, untilled and unsown from year to year, and has no living thing upon it, but only goats. For the Cyclops have no ships, nor yet shipwrights who can make ships for them. They cannot therefore go from city to city, or sail over the sea to one another's country, as people who have ships can do. If they had had these, they would have colonized the island, for it is a very good one, and would yield everything in due season. There are meadows that in some places come right down to the seashore, well watered and full of luscious grass. Grapes would do there excellently. There is level land for ploughing, and it would always yield heavily at harvest time, for the soil is deep. There is a good harbour, where no cables are wanted, nor yet anchors, nor need a ship be moored, but all one has to do is to beach one's vessel, and stay there till the wind becomes fair for putting out to sea again. At the head of the harbour there is a spring of clear water coming out of a cave, and there are poplars growing all round it. Here we entered, but so dark was the night that some god must have brought us in, for there was nothing whatever to be seen. A thick mist hung all round our ships. The moon was hidden behind a mass of clouds, so that no one could have seen the island if he had looked for it. Nor were there any breakers to tell us we were close inshore before we found ourselves upon the land itself. When, however, we had beached the ships, we took down the sails, went ashore and camped upon the beach till daybreak. When the child of morning, rosy-fingered dawn, appeared, we admired the island and wandered all over it, while the nymphs, Jove's daughters, roused the wild goats that we might get some meat for our dinner. On this we fetched our spears and bows and arrows from the ships, and dividing ourselves into 3 bands, began to shoot the goats. Heaven sent us excellent sport. I had 12 ships with me, and each ship got 9 goats, while my own ship had 10. Thus, through the livelong day, to the going down of the sun, we ate and drank our fill, and we had plenty of wine left, for each one of us had taken many jars full when we sacked the city of the Seacons, and this had not yet run out. While we were feasting, we kept turning our eyes towards the land of the Cyclops, which was hard by, and saw the smoke of their stubble fires. We could almost fancy we heard their voices and the bleating of their sheep and goats. But when the sun went down and it came on dark, we camped down upon the beach, and next morning I called a council. "Stay here, my brave fellows," said I, "all the rest of you, while I go with my ship and exploit these people myself. I want to see if they are uncivilized savages or a hospitable and humane race." I went on board, bidding my men to do so also, and loosed the horses. So they took their places and smote the grey sea with their oars. When we got to the land, which was not far, there on the face of a cliff near the sea we saw a great cave overhung with laurels. It was a station for a great many sheep and goats, and outside there was a large yard with a high wall round it made of stones built into the ground and of trees both pine and oak. This was the abode of a huge monster who was then away from home shepherding his flocks. He would have nothing to do with other people, but led the life of an outlaw. He was a horrid creature, not like a human being at all, but resembling rather some crag that stands out boldly against the sky on the top of a high mountain. I told my men to draw the ship ashore and stay where they were, all but the 12 best among them, who were to go along with myself. I also took a goat skin of sweet and black wine, which had been given me by Maron, son of Euanthes, who was priest of Apollo, the patron god of Ismarus, and lived within the wooded precincts of the temple. When we were sacking the city, we respected him and spared his life, as also his wife and child. So he made me some presents of great value, 3 tablets of fine gold, and a bowl of silver, with 12 jars of sweet wine, unblended, and of the most exquisite flavour. Not a man nor maid in the house knew about it, but only himself, his wife, and 1 housekeeper. When he drank it, he mixed 20 parts of water to 1 of wine, and yet the fragrance from the mixing bowl was so exquisite that it was impossible to refrain from drinking. I filled a large skin with this wine, and took a wallet full of provisions with me, for my mind misgave that I might have to deal with some savage who would be of great strength and would respect neither right nor law. We soon reached his cave, but he was out shepherding, so we went inside and took stock of all that we could see. His cheese racks were loaded with cheeses, and he had more lambs and kids than his pens could hold. They were kept in separate flocks. First there were the hoggets, then the oldest of the younger lambs, and lastly the very young ones, all kept apart from one another. As for his dairy, all the vessels, bowls and milk pails into which he milked were swimming with whey. When they saw all this, my men begged me to let them first steal some cheeses, and make off with them to the ship. They would then return, drive down the lambs and kids, put them on board, and sail away with them. It would have been indeed better if we had done so, but I would not listen to them, for I wanted to see the owner himself, in the hope that he might give me a present. When, however, we saw him, my poor men found him ill to deal with. We lit a fire, offered some of the cheeses in sacrifice, ate others of them, and then sat waiting till the Cyclops should come in with his sheep. When he came, he brought in with him a huge load of dry firewood to light the fire for his supper, and this he flung with such a noise onto the floor of his cave that we hid ourselves for fear at the far end of the cavern. Meanwhile, he drove all the ewes inside, as well as the she-goats that he was going to milk, leaving the males, both rams and he-goats, outside in the yards. Then he rolled a huge stone to the mouth of the cave, so huge that 22 strong 4-wheeled wagons could not be enough to draw it from its place against the doorway. When he had done so, he sat down and milked his ewes and goats, all in due course, and then he let each of them have her own young. He curdled half the milk and set it aside in wicker strainers, but the other half he poured into bowls that he might drink it for his supper. When he had got through with all his work, he lit the fire, and then caught sight of us, whereupon he said, "Strangers, who are you? Where do you sail from? Are you traders, or do you sail the sea as rovers, with your hands against every man, and every man's hand against you?" We were frightened out of our senses by his loud voice and monstrous form, but I managed to say, "We are Achaeans, on our way home from Troy, and by the will of Jove, and stress of weather, we have been driven far out of our course. We are the people of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, who has won infinite renown throughout the whole world by sacking so great a city and killing so many people. We therefore humbly pray you to show us some hospitality, and otherwise make us such presents as visitors may reasonably expect. May your excellency fear the wrath of heaven, for we are your suppliants, and Jove takes all respectable travellers under his protection, for he is the avenger of all suppliants and foreigners in distress." To this he gave me but a pitiless answer. "Stranger," said he, "you are a fool, or else you know nothing of this country. Talk to me, indeed, about fearing the gods or shunning their anger. We Cyclops do not care about Jove or any of your blessed gods, for we are ever so much stronger than they. I shall not spare either yourself or your companions out of any regard for Jove, unless I am in the humour for doing so. And now tell me where you made your ship fast when you came on shore. Was it round the point, or is she lying straight off the land?" He said this to draw me out, but I was too cunning to be caught in that way, so I answered with a lie. "Neptune," said I, "sent my ship onto the rocks at the far end of your country, and wrecked it. We were driven onto them from the open sea, but I and those who are with me escaped the jaws of death." The cruel wretch vouchsafed me not one word of answer, but with a sudden clutch he gripped up 2 of my men at once and dashed them down upon the ground as though they had been puppies. Their brains were shed upon the ground, and the earth was wet with their blood. Then he tore them limb from limb and supped upon them. He gobbled them up like a lion in the wilderness, flesh, bones, marrow and entrails, without leaving anything uneaten. As for us, we wept, and lifted up our hands to heaven on seeing such a horrid sight, for we did not know what else to do. But when the Cyclops had filled his huge paunch, and had washed down his meal of human flesh with a drink of neat milk, he stretched himself full length upon the ground among his sheep, and went to sleep. I was at first inclined to seize my sword, draw it, and drive it into his vitals. But I reflected that if I did, we should all certainly be lost, for we should never be able to shift the stone which the monster had put in front of the door. So we stayed sobbing and sighing where we were till morning came. When the child of morning, rosy-fingered Dawn, appeared, he again lit his fire, milked his goats and ewes, all quite rightly, and then let each have her own young. As soon as he had got through with all his work, he clutched up 2 more of my men, and began eating them for his morning's meal. Presently, with the utmost ease, he rolled the stone away from the door, and drove out his sheep. But he at once put it back again, as easily as though he were merely clapping the lid onto a quiver full of arrows. As soon as he had done so, he shouted and cried, "Shoo! Shoo!" after his sheep, to drive them onto the mountain. So I was left to scheme some way of taking my revenge, and covering myself with glory. In the end, I deemed it would be the best plan to do as follows. The Cyclops had a great club, which was lying near one of the sheep pens. It was of green olive wood, and he had cut it, intending it to use for a staff as soon as it should be dry. It was so huge that we could only compare it to the mast of a 20-oared merchant vessel of large burden, and able to venture out into open sea.
Come and get me.
I went up to this club and cut off about 6 feet of it. I then gave this piece to the men and told them to fine it evenly off at one end, which they proceeded to do, and lastly I brought it to a point myself, charring the end in the fire to make it harder. When I had done this, I hid it under dung, which was lying about all over the cave, and told the men to cast lots which of them should venture along with myself to lift it and bore it into the monster's eye while he was asleep. The lot fell upon the very 4 whom I should have chosen, and I myself made 5. In the evening the wretch came back from shepherding, and drove his flocks into the cave, this time driving them all inside, and not leaving any in the yards. I suppose some fancy must have taken him, or a god must have prompted him to do so. As soon as he had put the stone back in its place against the door, he sat down, milked his ewes and his goats all quite rightly, and then let each have her own young. When he had got through with all this work, he gripped up 2 more of my men, and made his supper of them. So I went up to him, with an ivy-wood bowl of black wine in my hands. "Look here, Cyclops," said I, "you have been eating a great deal of man's flesh, so take this and drink some wine, that you may see what kind of liquor we had on board my ship. I was bringing it to you as a drink offering, in the hope that you would take compassion upon me, and further me on my way home, whereas all you do is go on ramping and raving most intolerably. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. How can you expect people to come see you any more if you treat them in this way?" He then took the cup and drank. He was so delighted with the taste of the wine that he begged me for another bowlful. "Be so kind," he said, "as to give me some more, and tell me your name at once. I want to make you a present that you will be glad to have. We have wine even in this country, for our soil grows grapes, and the sun ripens them. But this drinks like nectar and ambrosia all in one." I then gave him some more. 3 times did I fill the bowl for him, and 3 times did he drain it without thought or heed. Then, when I saw that the wine had got into his head, I said to him as plausibly as I could, "Cyclops, you ask my name, and I will tell it to you. Give me, therefore, the present you promised me. My name is No Man. This is what my father and mother and my friends have always called me." But the cruel wretch said, "Then I will eat all No Man's comrades before No Man himself, and will keep No Man for the last. This is the present that I will make him." As he spoke, he reeled and fell sprawling face upwards on the ground. His great neck hung heavily backwards, and a deep sleep told upon him. Presently he turned sick, and threw up both wine and the gobbets of human flesh on which he had been gorging, for he was very drunk. Then I thrust the beam of wood far into the embers to heat it, and encouraged my men lest any of them should turn faint-hearted. When the wood, green though it was about to blaze, I drew it out of the fire glowing with heat, and my men gathered round me, for heaven had filled their hearts with courage. We drove the sharp end of the beam into the monster's eye, and bearing upon it with all my weight, I kept turning it round and round as though I were boring a hole in a ship's plank with an auger, which two men with a wheel and strap can keep on turning as long as they choose. Even thus did we bore the red-hot beam into his eye, till the boiling blood bubbled all over it as we worked it round and round, so that the steam from the burning eyeballs scalded his eyelids and eyebrows, and the roots of the eye sputtered in the fire. As a blacksmith plunges an axe or hatchet into cold water to temper it, for it is this that gives strength to the iron, and it makes a great hiss as he does so. Even thus did the Cyclops' eye hiss round the beam of olive wood, and his hideous yells made the cave ring again. We ran away in a fright, but he plucked the beam, all besmirched with gore from his eye, and hurled it from him in a frenzy of rage and pain, shouting as he did so to the other Cyclops who lived on the bleak headlands near him. So they gathered from all quarters round his cave when they heard him crying, and asked him what was the matter with him. "What ails you, Polyphemus," said they, "that you make such a noise, breaking the stillness of the night, and preventing us from being able to sleep? Surely no man is carrying off your sheep. Surely no man is trying to kill you, either by fraud or by force." But Polyphemus shouted to them from inside the cave, "No man is killing me by fraud! No man is killing me by force!" "Then," said they, "if no man is attacking you, you must be ill. When Jove makes people ill, there is no help for it, and you had better pray to your father Neptune." Then they went away, and I laughed inwardly at the success of my clever stratagem. But the Cyclops, groaning and in an agony of pain, felt about with his hands till he found the stone and took it from the door. Then he sat in the doorway and stretched his hands in front of it to catch anyone going out with the sheep, for he thought I might be foolish enough to attempt it. As for myself, I kept on puzzling to think how I could best save my own life and those of my companions. I schemed and schemed, as one who knows that his life depends on it, for the danger was very great. In the end, I deemed that this plan would be the best. The male sheep were well grown, and carried a heavy black fleece, so I bound them noiselessly in threes together, with some of the withies on which the wicked monster used to sleep. There was to be a man under the middle sheep, and the two on either side were to cover him, so that there were 3 sheep to each man. As for myself, there was a ram finer than any of the others, so I caught hold of him by the back, ensconced myself in the thick wool under his belly, and hung on patiently to his fleece, face upwards, keeping a firm hold on it all the time. Thus then did we wait in great fear of the mine till morning came. When the child of morning, rosy-fingered dawn, appeared, the male sheep hurried out to feed, while the ewes remained bleating about the pens, waiting to be milked, for their udders were full to bursting. But their master, in spite of all his pain, felt the backs of all the sheep as they stood upright, without being sharp enough to find out that the men were underneath their bellies. As the ram was going out, last of all, heavy with its fleeces, and with the weight of my crafty self, Polyphemus laid hold of it and said, "My good ram, what is it that makes you the last to leave my cave this morning? You are not wont to let the ewes go before you, but lead the mob with a run, whether to flowery mead or bubbling fountain, and are the first to come home again at night. But now you lag last of all. Is it because you know your master has lost his eye, and are sorry because that wicked no-man and his horrid crew has got him down on his drink and blinded him? But I will have his life yet. If you could understand and talk, you would tell me where the wretch is hiding, and I would dash his brains upon the ground till they flew all over the cave. I should thus have some satisfaction for the harm this no good no-man has done." As he spoke, he drove the ram outside. But when we were a little way out from the cave and yards, I first got from under the ram's belly, and then freed my comrades. As for the sheep, which were very fat, by constantly heading them in the right direction, we managed to drive them down to the ship. The crew rejoiced greatly at seeing those of us who had escaped death, but wept for the others whom the Cyclops had killed. However, I made signs to them by nodding and frowning that they were to hush their crying, and told them to get all the sheep on board at once and put out to sea. So they went aboard, took their places, and smote the grey sea with their oars. Then, when I had got as far out as my voice would reach, I began to jeer at the Cyclops. "Cyclops," said I, "you should have taken better measure of your man before eating up his comrades in your cave. You wretch, eat up your visitors in your own house. You might have known that your sin would find you out, and now Jove and the other gods have punished you." He got more and more furious as he heard me. So he tore the top from off a high mountain and flung it just in front of my ship, so that it was within a little of hitting the end of the rudder. The sea quaked as the rock fell into it, and the wash of the wave it raised carried us back towards the mainland, and forced us towards the shore. But I snatched up a long pole and kept the ship off, making signs to my men by nodding my head that they must row for their lives. Whereupon they laid out with a will. When we had got twice as far as we were before, I was for jeering at the Cyclops again, but the men begged and prayed of me to hold my tongue. "Do not," they exclaimed, "be mad enough to provoke this savage creature further. He has thrown one rock at us already, which drove us back again to the mainland, and we made sure it had been the death of us. If it had then heard any further sound of voices, he would have pounded our heads and our ship's timbers into a jelly with the rugged rocks he would have heaved at us, for he can throw them a long way." But I would not listen to them, and shouted out to him in my rage, "Cyclops, if anyone asks you who it was that put out your eye and spoiled your beauty, say it was the valiant warrior Ulysses, son of Laertes, who lives in Ithaca." On this he groaned and cried out, "Alas, alas, then the old prophecy about me is coming true. There was a prophet here at one time, a man both brave and of great stature, Telemus, son of Eurymus, who was an excellent seer. and did all the prophesying for the Cyclops till he grew old. He told me that all this would happen to me some day, and said I should use my sight by the hand of Ulysses. I have been all along expecting someone of imposing presence and superhuman strength, whereas he turns out to be a little insignificant weakling who has managed to blind my eye by taking advantage of me in my drink. Come here then, Ulysses, that I may make you presents to show my hospitality, and urge Neptune to help you forward on your journey. For Neptune and I are father and son. He, if he so will, shall heal me, which no one else, neither god nor man, can do. Then I said, I wish I could be as sure of killing you outright and sending you down to the house of Hades as I am that it will take more than Neptune to cure that eye of yours. On this, he lifted up his hands to the firmament of heaven and prayed, saying, Hear me, great Neptune. If I am indeed your own true begotten son, grant that Ulysses may never reach his home alive. Or if he must get back to his friends at last, let him do so late and in sore plight after losing all his men. Let him reach his home in another man's ship and find trouble in his house. Thus did he pray, and Neptune heard his prayer. Then he picked up a rock much larger than the first, swung it aloft, and hurled it with prodigious force. It fell just short of the ship, but was within a little of hitting the end of the rudder. The sea quaked as the rock fell into it, and the wash of the wave it raised drove us onwards on our way towards the shore of the island. When at last we got to the island where we had left the rest of our ships, we found our comrades lamenting us and anxiously awaiting our return. We ran our vessel upon the sands and got out of her onto the seashore. We also landed the Cyclops' sheep and divided them equitably amongst us so that none might have reason to complain. As for the ram, my companions agreed that I should have it as an extra share. So I sacrificed it on the seashore and burned its thigh bones to Jove, who is the lord of all. But he heeded not my sacrifice, and only thought how he might destroy both my ships and my comrades. Thus through the livelong day, to the going down of the sun, we feasted our fill on meat and drink. But when the sun went down, and it came on dark, we camped upon the beach. When the child of morning, rosy-fingered dawn, appeared, I bade my men on board and loose the horses. Then they took their places and smote the grey sea with their oars. So we sailed on with sorrow in our hearts, but glad to have escaped death, though we had lost our comrades. End of Book 9. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Raymond. The Odyssey by Homer. Translated by Samuel Butler. Book 10. Aeolus, the Laestrygons, Circe. Thence we went on to the Aeolian Islands, where lives Aeolus, son of Hephaestus, dear to the immortal gods. It is an island that floats, as it were, upon the sea, iron bound with a wall that girds it. Now Aeolus has 6 daughters and 6 lusty sons. So he made the sons marry the daughters, and they all lived with their dear father and mother, feasting and enjoying every conceivable kind of luxury. All day long the atmosphere of the house is loaded with the savour of roasting meats, till it groans again, yard and all. But by night they sleep on their well-made bedsteads, each with his own wife between the blankets. These were the people among whom we had now come. Aeolus entertained me for a whole month, asking me questions all the time about Troy, the Argive fleet, and the return of the Achaeans. I told him exactly how everything had happened, and when I said I must go, and asked him to further me on my way, he made no sort of difficulty, but set about doing so at once. Moreover, he flayed me a prime ox hide to hold the way of the roaring winds, which he shut up in the hide, as in a sack, for Jove had made him captain over the winds, and he could stir or still each one of them according to his own pleasure. He put the sack in the ship, and bound the mouth so tightly with a silver thread that not even a breath of a side wind could blow from any quarter. The west wind, which was fair for us, did he alone let blow as it chose. But it all came to nothing, for we were lost through our own folly. 9 days and 9 nights did we sail, and on the 10th day our native land showed on the horizon. We got so close in that we could see the stubble fires burning, and I, being then dead beat, fell into a light sleep, for I had never let the rudder out of my own hands, that we might get home faster. On this, the men fell to talking amongst themselves, and said I was bringing back gold and silver in the sack that Aeolus had given me. Bless my heart, would one turn to his neighbour, saying, how this man gets honoured and makes friends to whatever city or country he may go. See what fine prizes he is taking home from Troy, while we, who have travelled just as far as he have, come back with hands as empty as we set out with. And now Aeolus has given him ever so much more. Quick, let us see what it all is, and how much gold and silver there is in the sack he gave him. Thus they talked, and evil counsels prevailed. They loosed the sack, whereupon the wind flew howling forth, and raised a storm that carried us weeping out to sea and away from our own country. Then I awoke, and knew not whether to throw myself into the sea, or to live on and make the best of it. But I bore it, covered myself up, and lay down in the ship, while the men lamented bitterly as the fierce winds bore our fleet back to the Aeolian island. When we reached it, we went ashore to take in water, and dined hard by the ships. Immediately after dinner, I took a herald and one of my men, and went straight to the house of Aeolus, where I found him feasting with his wife and family. So we sat down as suppliants on the threshold. They were astounded when they saw us, and said, Ulysses, what brings you here? What god has been ill-treating you? We took great pains to further you on your way home to Ithaca, or wherever it was that you wanted to go to. Thus did they speak, but I answered sorrowfully, my men have undone me, they and cruel sleep have ruined me. My friends, mend me this mischief, for you can if you will. I spoke as movingly as I could, but they said nothing, till their father answered, vilest of mankind, get you gone at once out of the islands. Him whom heaven hates will I in no wise help. Be off, for you came here as one abhorred of heaven. And with these words he sent me sorrowing from his door. Hence we sailed sadly on, until the men were worn out with long and fruitless rowing, for there was no longer any wind to help them. 6 days, night and day did we toil, and on the 7th day we reached the rocky stronghold of Lamus, Telephilus, the city of Laestrygonians, where the shepherd, who is driving in his sheep and goats to be milked, salutes him who is driving out his flock to feed, and this last answers the salute. In that country, a man who could do without sleep might earn double wages, one as a herdsman of cattle, and another as a shepherd, for they work much the same by night as they do by day. When we reached the harbour, we found it landlocked under steep cliffs, with a narrow entrance between 2 headlands. My captains took all their ships inside, and made them fast close to one another, for there was never so much as a breath of wind inside, but it was always dead calm. I kept my own ship outside, and moored it to a rock at the very end of the point. Then I climbed a high rock to reconnoitre, but could see no sign neither of man nor cattle, only some smoke rising from the ground. So I sent 2 of my company with an attendant to find out what sort of people the inhabitants were. The men, when they got on shore, followed a level road by which the people draw their firewood from the mountains into the town, till presently they met a young woman who had come outside to fetch water, and who was daughter to a Laestrygonian named Antiphates. She was going to the fountain Artacia, from which the people bring in their water, and when my men had come close up to her, they asked her who the king of that country might be, and over what kind of people he ruled. So she directed them to her father's house. But when they got there, they found his wife to be a giantess as huge as a mountain, and they were horrified at the sight of her. She at once called her husband Antiphates from the place of assembly, and forthwith he set about killing my men. He snatched up one of them, and began to make his dinner of him then and there, whereon the other 2 ran back to the ships as fast as ever they could. But Antiphates raised a hue and cry after them, and thousands of sturdy Laestrygonians sprang up from every quarter, ogres, not men. They threw vast rocks at us from the cliffs as though they had been mere stones, and I heard the horrid sound of the ships crunching up against one another, and the death cries of my men as the Laestrygonians speared them like fishes and took them home to eat them. While they were thus killing my men within the harbour, I drew my sword, cut the cable of my own ship, and told my men to row with all their might, if they too would not fare like the rest. So they laid out for their lives, and we were thankful enough when we got into open waters out of reach of the rocks they hurled at us. As for the others, there was not one of them left. Thence we sailed sadly on, glad to have escaped death, though we had lost our comrades, and came to the Aeaean island, where Circe lives, a great and cunning goddess, who is own sister to the magician Aeetes, for they are both children of the sun by Perse, who is daughter to Oceanus. We brought our ship into a safe harbour without a word, for some god guided us thither, and having landed we lay there for 2 days and 2 nights, worn out in body and mind. When the morning of the 3rd day came, I took my spear and my sword, and went away from the ship to reconnoitre, and see if I could discover signs of human handiwork, or hear the sound of voices. Climbing to the top of a high lookout, I espied the smoke of Circe's house, rising upwards amid a dense forest of trees. And when I saw this, I doubted whether, having seen the smoke, I would not go at once and find out more. But in the end, I deemed it best to go back to the ship, give the men their dinners, and send some of them instead of going myself. When I had nearly got back to the ship, some god took pity upon my solitude, and sent a fine antlered stag right into the middle of my path. He was coming down his pasture in the forest to drink of the river, for the heat of the sun drove him, and as he passed I struck him in the middle of the back. The bronze point of the spear went clean through him, and he lay groaning in the dust until the life went out of him. Then I set my foot upon him, drew my spear from the wound, and laid it down. I also gathered rough grass and rushes and twisted them into a fathom or so of good stout rope, with which I bound the 4 feet of the noble creature together. Having so done, I hung him round my neck and walked back to the ship leaning upon my spear, for the stag was much too big for me to be able to carry him on my shoulder, steadying him with one hand. As I threw him down in front of the ship, I called the men and spoke cheeringly, man by man, to each of them. "Look here, my friends," said I, "we are not going to die so much before our time after all, and at any rate we will not starve so long as we have got something to eat and drink on board." On this they uncovered their heads upon the seashore and admired the stag, for he was indeed a splendid fellow. Then, when they had feasted their eyes upon him sufficiently, they washed their hands and began to cook him for dinner. Thus, through the livelong day to the going down of the sun, we stayed there eating and drinking our fill. But when the sun went down and it came on dark, we camped upon the seashore. When the child of morning, rosy-fingered Dawn, appeared, I called a council and said, "My friends, we are in very great difficulties. Listen therefore to me. We have no idea where the sun either sets or rises, so that we do not even know east from west. I see no way out of it. Nevertheless, we must try and find one. We are certainly on an island, for I went as high as I could this morning and saw the sea reaching all round it to the horizon. It lies low, but towards the middle I saw smoke rising from out of a thick forest of trees." Their hearts sank as they heard me, for they remembered how they had been treated by the Lestrygonian Antiphates and by the savage ogre Polyphemus. They wept bitterly in their dismay, but there was nothing to be got by crying. So I divided them into 2 companies and set a captain over each. I gave one company to Eurylochus, while I took command of the other myself. Then we cast lots in a helmet, and the lot fell upon Eurylochus. So he set out with his 22 men, and they wept, as also did we who were left behind. When they reached Circe's house, they found it built of cut stones, on a site that could be seen from far, in the middle of the forest. There were wild mountain wolves and lions prowling all round it. Poor bewitched creatures, whom she had tamed by her enchantments and drugged into subjection. They did not attack my men, but wagged their great tails, fawned upon them and rubbed their noses lovingly against them, as hounds crowd round their master when they see him coming from dinner, for they know he will bring them something. Even so did these wolves and lions with their great claws fawn upon my men. But the men were terribly frightened at seeing such strange creatures. Presently they reached the gates of the goddess's house, and as they stood there they could hear Circe within, singing most beautifully as she worked at her loom, making a web so fine, so soft, and of such dazzling colours as no one but a goddess could weave. On this Polites, whom I valued and trusted much more than any other of my men, said, "There is someone inside working at a loom and singing most beautifully. The whole place resounds with it. Let us call her and see whether she is woman or goddess." They called her, and she came down, unfastened the door and bade them enter. They, thinking no evil, followed her, all except Eurylochus, who suspected mischief and stayed outside. When she had got them into her house, she set them upon benches and seats and mixed them a mess with cheese, honey, meal and Pramnian wine. But she drugged it with wicked poisons to make them forget their homes. And when they had drunk, she turned them into pigs by a stroke of her wand, shut them up in her pigsties. They were like pigs, head, hair and all, and they grunted just as pigs do. But their senses were the same as before, and they remembered everything. Thus then were they shut up squealing, and Circe threw them some acorns and beech masts, such as pigs eat. But Eurylochus hurried back to tell me about the sad fate of our comrades. He was so overcome with dismay that though he tried to speak, he could find no words to do so. His eyes filled with tears, and he could only sob and sigh, till at last we forced his story out of him, and he told us what had happened to the others. We went, said he, as you told us, through the forest, and in the middle of it there was a fine house built with cut stones, in a place that could be seen from far. There we found a woman, or else she was a goddess, working at her loom and singing sweetly. So the men shouted to her and called her, whereon she at once came down, opened the door and invited us in. The others did not suspect any mischief, so they followed her into the house. But I stayed where I was, for I thought there might be some treachery. From that moment I saw them no more, for not one of them ever came out, though I sat a long time watching for them. Then I took my sword of bronze and slung it over my shoulders. I also took my bow and told Eurylochus to come back with me and show me the way. But he laid hold of me with both his hands and spoke piteously, saying, "Sir, do not force me to go with you, but let me stay here, for I know you will not bring one of them back with you, nor even return alive yourself. Let us rather see if we cannot escape, at any rate, with the few that are left us, for we may still save our lives." "Stay where you are then," I answered, "eating and drinking at the ship, but I must go, for I am most urgently bound to do so." With this I left the ship and went up inland. When I got through the charmed grove and was near the great house of the enchantress Circe, I met Mercury with his golden wand, disguised as a young man in the heyday of his youth and beauty, with the down just coming upon his face. He came up to me and took my hand within his own, saying, "My poor unhappy man, whither are you going over this mountain top, alone and without knowing the way? Your men are shut up in Circe's pigsties, like so many wild boars in their lairs. You surely do not fancy that you can set them free. I can tell you that you will never get back, and will have to stay there with the rest of them. But never mind, I will protect you and get you out of your difficulty. Take this herb, which is one of great virtue, and keep it about you when you go to Circe's house. It will be a talisman to you against every kind of mischief. And I will tell you of all the wicked witchcraft that Circe will try to practice upon you. She will mix a mess for you to drink, and she will drug the meal with which she makes it, but she will not be able to charm you, for the virtue of the herb that I shall give you will prevent her spells from working. I will tell you all about it. When Circe strikes you with her wand, draw your sword and spring upon her as though you were going to kill her. She will then be frightened, and will desire you to go to bed with her. On this, you must not point blank refuse her, for you want her to set your companions free, and to take good care also of yourself. But you must make her swear solemnly by all the blessed gods that she will plot no further mischief against you, or else when she has got you naked, she will unman you and make you fit for nothing. As he spoke, he pulled the herb out of the ground and showed me what it was like. The root was black, while the flower was as white as milk. The gods call it moly, and mortal men cannot uproot it, but the gods can do whatever they like. Then Mercury went back to high Olympus, passing over the wooded island. But I fared onward to the house of Circe, and my heart was clouded with care as I walked along. When I got to the gates, I stood there and called the goddess, and as soon as she heard me, she came down, opened the door, and asked me to come in. So I followed her, much troubled in my mind. She set me on a richly decorated seat, inlaid with silver. There was a footstool also under my feet, and she mixed the mess in a golden goblet for me to drink, but she drugged it, for she meant me mischief. When she had given it me, and I had drunk it without its charming me, she struck me with her wand. "There now," she cried, "be off to the pigsty and make your lair with the rest of them." But I rushed at her with my sword drawn, as though I would kill her, whereupon she fell with a loud scream, clasped my knees and spoke piteously, saying, "Who and whence are you? From what place and people have you come? How can it be that my drugs have no power to charm you? Never yet was a man able to stand so much as a taste of the herb I gave you. You must be spell-proof. Surely you can be none other than the bold hero Ulysses, who Mercury always said would come here some day with his ship while on his way home from Troy. So be it then. Sheath your sword and let us go to bed, that we may make friends and learn to trust each other." And I answered, "Circe, how can you expect me to be friendly with you when you have just been turning all my men into pigs? And now that you have got me here myself, you mean me mischief when you ask me to go to bed with you, and will unman me and make me unfit for nothing. I shall certainly not consent to go to bed with you unless you will first take your solemn oath to plot no further harm against me." So she swore at once, as I had told her, and when she had completed her oath, then I went to bed with her. Meanwhile, her 4 servants, who are her housemaids, set about their work. They are the children of the groves and fountains, and of the holy waters that run down into the sea. One of them spread a fair purple cloth over a seat, and laid a carpet underneath it. Another brought tables of silver up to the seats, and set them with baskets of gold. A third mixed some sweet wine with water in a silver bowl, and put golden cups upon the tables, while the fourth brought in water and set it to boil in a large cauldron over a good fire which she had lighted. When the water in the cauldron was boiling, she poured cold into it till it was just as I liked it, and then she set me in a bath and began washing me from the cauldron about the head and shoulders, to take the tire and stiffness out of my limbs. As soon as she had done washing me and anointing me with oil, she arrayed me in a good cloak and shirt, and led me to a richly decorated seat inlaid with silver. There was a footstool also underneath my feet. A maidservant then brought me water in a beautiful golden ewer, and poured it into a silver basin for me to wash my hands, and she drew a clean table beside me. An upper servant brought me bread, and offered me many things, of what there was in the house, and then Circe bade me eat, but I would not, and sat without eating what was before me, still moody and suspicious. When Circe saw me sitting there without eating, and in great grief, she came to me and said, "Ulysses, why do you sit like that, as though you were dumb, gnawing at your own heart and refusing both meat and drink? Is it that you are still suspicious? You ought not to be, for I have already sworn solemnly that I will not hurt you."
Come and get me.
And I said, "Circe, no man with any sense of what is right can think of either eating or drinking in your house until you have set his friends free and let him see them. If you want me to eat and drink, you must free my men and bring them to me that I may see them with my own eyes." When I had said this, she went straight through the court with her wand in her hand and opened the pigsty doors. My men came out like so many prime hogs and stood looking at her, but she went among them and anointed each with a second drug. whereupon the bristles that the bad drug had given them fell off, and they became men again, younger than they were before, and much taller and better looking. They knew me at once, seized me each of them by the hand, and wept for joy, till the whole house itself was filled with the sound of their halloa bellowing. And Circe herself was so sorry for them that she came up to me and said, "Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, go back at once to the sea where you have left your ship, and first draw it onto the land, then hide all your ship's gear and property in some cave, and come back here with your men." I agreed to this, so I went back to the seashore and found the men at the ship weeping and wailing most piteously. When they saw me, the silly blubbering fellows began frisking round me as calves break out and gambol round their mothers when they see them coming home to be milked after they have been feeding all day, and the homestead resounds with their lowing. They seemed as glad to see me as though they had got back to their own rugged Ithaca, where they had been born and bred. "Sir," said the affectionate creatures, "we are as glad to see you back as though you had got safe home to Ithaca. But tell us all about the fate of our comrades." I spoke comforting to them, and said, "We must draw our ship onto the land and hide the ship's gear with all our property in some cave. Then come with me, all of you, as fast as you can to Circe's house, where you will find your comrades eating and drinking in the midst of great abundance." On this, the men would have come with me at once, but Eurylochus tried to hold them back and said, "Alas, poor wretches that we are, what will become of us? Rush not on your ruin by going to the house of Circe, who will turn us all into pigs or wolves or lions, and we shall have to keep guard over her house. Remember how the Cyclops treated us when our comrades went inside his cave, and Ulysses with them. It was all through his sheer folly that those men lost their lives." When I heard him, I was in two minds whether or no to draw the keen blade that hung by my sturdy thigh and cut his head off in spite of his being a near relation of my own. But the men interceded for him and said, "Sir, if it may so be, let this fellow stay here and mind the ship, but take the rest of us with you to Circe's house." On this we all went inland, and Eurylochus was not left behind after all, but came on too, for he was frightened by the severe reprimand that I had given him. Meanwhile, Circe had been seeing that the men who had been left behind were washed and anointed with olive oil. She had also given them woolen cloaks and shirts, and when we came we found them all comfortably at dinner in her house. As soon as the men saw each other face to face and knew one another, they wept for joy and cried aloud till the whole palace rang again. Thereon Circe came up to me and said, "Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, tell your men to leave off crying. I know how much you have all of you suffered at sea, and how ill you have fared among cruel savages on the mainland. But that is over now, so stay here, eat and drink, till you are once more as strong and hearty as you were when you left Ithaca. For at present you are weakened both in body and mind. You keep all the time thinking of the hardships you have suffered during your travels, so that you have no more cheerfulness left in you." Thus did she speak, and we assented. We stayed with Circe for a whole 12 months, feasting upon an untold quantity both of meat and wine. But when the year had passed, in the waning of moons, and the long days had come round, my men called me apart and said, "Sir, it is time you began to think about going home, if so be you are to be spared to see your house and native country at all." Thus did they speak, and I assented. Thereon, through the livelong day to the going down of the sun, we feasted our fill on meat and wine. But when the sun went down, and it came on dark, the men laid themselves down to sleep in the covered cloisters. I, however, after I had got into bed with Circe, besought her by her knees, and the goddess listened to what I had got to say. "Circe," said I, please to keep the promise you made me about furthering me on my homeward voyage. I want to get back, and so do my men. They are always pestering me with their complaints as soon as ever your back is turned." And the goddess answered, "Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, you shall none of you stay here any longer if you do not want to. But there is another journey which you have got to take before you can sail homewards. You must go to the house of Hades and of dead Proserpine to consult the ghost of the blind Theban prophet Tiresias, whose reason is still unshaken. To him alone has Proserpine left his understanding, even in death, but the other ghosts flit about aimlessly." I was dismayed when I heard this. I sat up in bed and wept, and would gladly have lived no longer to see the light of the sun. But presently, when I was tired of weeping and tossing myself about, I said, "Who shall guide me upon this voyage? For the house of Hades is a port that no ship can reach." "You will want no guide," she answered. "Raise your mast, set your white sails, sit quite still, and the north wind will blow you there of itself. When your ship has traversed the waters of Oceanus, you will reach the fertile shore of Proserpine's country, with its groves of tall poplars and willows that shed their fruit untimely. Here beach your ship upon the shore of Oceanus, and go straight on to the dark abode of Hades. You will find it near the place where the rivers Pyriphlegethon and Cocytus, which is a branch of the river Styx, flow into Acheron, and you will see a rock near it, just where the two roaring rivers run into one another. When you have reached this spot, as I now tell you, dig a trench a cubit or so in length, breadth and depth, and pour into it, as a drink offering to all the dead, first honey mixed with milk, then wine, and in the third place water, sprinkling white barley meal over the whole. Moreover, you must offer many prayers to the poor feeble ghosts, and promise them that when you get back to Ithaca, you will sacrifice a barren heifer to them, the best you have, and will load the pyre with good things. More particularly, you must promise that Tiresias shall have a black sheep all to himself, and the finest of all your flocks. When you shall have thus besought the ghosts with your prayers, offer them a ram and a black ewe, bending their heads towards Erebus, but yourself turn away from them as though you would make towards the river. On this, many dead men's ghosts will come to you, and you must tell your men to skin the two sheep that you have just killed, and offer them as a burnt sacrifice, with prayers to Hades and to Proserpine. Then draw your sword and sit there, so as to prevent any other poor ghost from coming near the spilt blood before Tiresias shall have answered your questions. The seer will presently come to you, and will tell you about your voyage, what stages you are to make, and how you are to sail the sea so as to reach your home." It was daybreak by the time she had done speaking, so she dressed me in my shirt and cloak. As for herself, she threw a beautiful light gossamer fabric over her shoulders, fastening it with a golden girdle around her waist, and she covered her head with a mantle. Then I went about among the men everywhere all over the house, and spoke kindly to each of them, man by man. "You must not lie sleeping here any longer," said I to them. "We must be going, for Circe has told me all about it." And on this they did as I bade them. Even so, however, I did not get them away without misadventure. We had with us a certain youth named Elpenor, not very remarkable for sense or courage, who had got drunk and was lying on the housetop away from the rest of the men to sleep off his liquor in the cool. When he heard the noise of the men bustling about, he jumped up on a sudden and forgot all about coming down by the main staircase. So he tumbled right off the roof and broke his neck, and his soul went down to the house of Hades. When I had got the men together, I said to them, You think you are about to start home again, but Circe has explained to me that instead of this, we have got to go to the house of Hades and Proserpine to consult the ghost of the Theban prophet Tiresias. The men were broken-hearted as they heard me, and threw themselves on the ground, groaning and tearing their hair. But they did not mend matters by crying. When we reached the seashore, weeping and lamenting our fate, Circe brought the ram and the ewe, and we made them fast hard by the ship. She passed through the midst of us without our knowing it, for who can see the comings and goings of a god, if the god does not wish to be seen? End of Book 10.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Robin Cotter, Toronto, Ontario, October 2006. The Odyssey by Homer. Translated by Samuel Butler. Book number 11. The Visit to the Dead. Then, when we had got down to the seashore, we drew our ship into the water, and got her mast and sails into her. We also put the sheep on board, and took our places, weeping and in great distress of mind. Circe, that great and cunning goddess, sent us a fair wind that blew dead aft, and stayed steadily with us, keeping our sails all the time well filled. So we did whatever wanted doing to the ship's gear, and let her go as the wind and helmsman headed her. All day long her sails were full as she held her course over the sea, but when the sun went down and darkness was over all the earth, we got into the deep waters of the river Oceanus, where lie the land and city of the Cimmerians, who live enshrouded in mist and darkness, which the rays of the sun never pierce, neither at his rising, nor as he goes down again out of the heavens. The poor wretches live in one long, melancholy night. When we got there, we beached the ship, took the sheep out of her, and went along by the waters of Oceanus, till we came to the place of which Circe had told us. Here Perimedes and Eurylochus held the victims, while I drew my sword and dug the trench a cubit each way. I made a drink offering to all the dead, first with honey and milk, then with wine, and thirdly with water, and I sprinkled white barley meal over the whole, praying earnestly to the poor, feckless ghosts, and promising them that when I got back to Ithaca, I would sacrifice a barren heifer for them, the best I had, and would load the pyre with good things. I also particularly promised that Tiresias should have a black sheep to himself, the best in all my flocks. When I had prayed sufficiently to the dead, I cut the throats of the 2 sheep and let the blood run into the trench, whereon the ghosts came trooping up from Erebus, brides, young bachelors, old men worn out with toil, maids who had been crossed in love, and brave men who had been killed in battle, with their armor still smirched with blood. They came from every quarter and flitted round the trench with a strange kind of screaming sound that made me turn pale with fear. When I saw them coming, I told the men to be quick and flay the carcasses of the 2 dead sheep and make burnt offerings of them, and at the same time to repeat prayers to Hades and to Proserpine. But I sat where I was with my sword drawn, and would not let the poor, feckless ghosts come near the blood till Tiresias should have answered my questions. The first ghost that came was that of my comrade, Elpenor, for he had not yet been laid beneath the earth. We had left his body unwaked and unburied in Circe's house, for we had had too much else to do. I was very sorry for him, and cried when I saw him. "Elpenor," said I, "how did you come down here into this gloom and darkness? You have got here on foot quicker than I have with my ship." "Sir," he answered with a groan, "it was all bad luck, and my own unspeakable drunkenness. I was lying asleep on the top of Circe's house, and never thought of coming down again by the great staircase, but fell right off the roof and broke my neck, so my soul came down to the house of Hades. And now I beseech you by all those whom you have left behind you, though they are not here, by your wife, by the father who brought you up when you were a child, and by Telemachus, who is the one hope of your house, do what I shall now ask you. I know that when you leave this limbo, you will again hold your ship for the Aegean island. Do not go thence, leaving me unwaked and unburied behind you, or I may bring heaven's anger upon you. But burn me with whatever armor I have. Build a barrow for me on the seashore, that may tell people in days to come what a poor, unlucky fellow I was, and plant over my grave the oar that I used to row with when I was yet alive and with my messmates." And I said, "My poor fellow, I will do all that you have asked of me." Thus then did we sit and hold sad talk with one another, I on the one side of the trench, with my sword held over the blood, and the ghost of my comrade saying all this to me from the other side. Then came the ghost of my dead mother, Anticlea, daughter of Autolycus. I had left her alive when I set out for Troy, and was moved to tears when I saw her, but even so, for all my sorrow, I would not let her come near the blood till I had asked my questions of Tiresias. Then came also the ghost of Theban Tiresias, with his golden scepter in his hands. He knew me, and said, "Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, why, poor man, have you left the light of day, and come down to visit the dead in this sad place? Stand back from the trench, and withdraw your sword, that I may drink of the blood, and answer your questions truly." So I drew back, and sheathed my sword, whereon, when he had drank of the blood, he began with his prophecy. "You want to know," said he, "about your return home, but heaven will make this hard for you. I do not think that you will escape the eye of Neptune, who still nurses his bitter grudge against you for having blinded his son. Still, after much suffering, you may get home if you can restrain yourself and your companions when your ship reaches the Thrinacian island, where you will find the sheep and cattle belonging to the sun, who sees and gives ear to everything. If you leave these flocks unharmed and think of nothing but of getting home, you may yet, after much hardship, reach Ithaca. But if you harm them, then I forewarn you of the destruction both of your ship and of your men. Even though you may yourself escape, you will return in bad plight after losing all your men in another man's ship, and you will find trouble in your house, which will be overrun by high-handed people who are devouring your substance under the pretext of paying court and making presents to your wife. When you get home, you will take your revenge on these suitors, and after you have killed them by force or fraud in your own house, you must take a well-made oar and carry it on and on, till you come to a country where the people have never heard of the sea, and do not even mix salt with their food, nor do they know anything about ships, and oars that are as the wings of a ship. I will give you this certain token which cannot escape your notice. A wayfarer will meet you, and will say it must be a winnowing shovel that you have got upon your shoulder. On this you must fix the oar in the ground, and sacrifice a ram, a bull, and a boar to Neptune. Then go home, and offer hecatombs to all the gods in heaven, one after the other. As for yourself, death shall come to you from the sea, and your life shall ebb away very gently when you are full of years and peace of mind, and your people shall bless you. All that I have said will come true." "This," I answered, "must be as it may please heaven, but tell me, and tell me, and tell me true. I see my poor mother's ghost close by us. She is sitting by the blood without saying a word, and though I am her own son, she does not remember me and speak to me. Tell me, sir, how can I make her know me?" "That," said he, "I can soon do. Any ghost that you let taste of the blood will talk with you like a reasonable being, but if you do not let them have any blood, they will go away again." On this the ghost of Tiresias went back to the house of Hades, for his prophesyings had now been spoken. But I sat still where I was until my mother came up and tasted the blood. Then she knew me at once, and spoke fondly to me, saying, "My son, how did you come down to this abode of darkness while you are still alive? It is a hard thing for the living to see these places, for between us and them there are great and terrible waters, and there is Oceanus, which no man can cross on foot, but he must have a good ship to take him. Are you all this time trying to find your way home from Troy, and have you never yet got back to Ithaca, nor seen your wife in your own house?" "Mother," said I was forced to come here to consult the ghost of the Theban prophet Tiresias. I have never yet been near the Achaean land, nor set foot on my native country, and I have had nothing but one long series of misfortunes from the very first day that I set out with Agamemnon for Ilius, the land of noble steeds, to fight the Trojans. But tell me, and tell me true, in what way did you die? Did you have a long illness, or did heaven vouchsafe you a gentle, easy passage to eternity? Tell me also about my father, and the son whom I left behind me. Is my property still in their hands, or has someone else got hold of it? Who thinks that I shall not return to claim it? Tell me again what my wife intends doing, and in what mind she is. Does she live with my son and guard my estate securely, or has she made the best match she could and married again?" My mother answered, "Your wife still remains in your house, but she is in great distress of mind, and spends her whole time in tears both night and day. No one as yet has got possession of your fine property, and Telemachus still holds your lands undisturbed. He has to entertain largely, as of course he must, considering his position as a magistrate, and how every one invites him. Your father remains at his old place in the country, and never goes near the town. He has no comfortable bed nor bedding. In the winter he sleeps on the floor in front of the fire with the men, and goes about all in rags, but in summer, when the warm weather comes on again, he lies out in the vineyard on a bed of vine leaves thrown anyhow upon the ground. He grieves continually about your never having come home, and suffers more and more as he grows older. As for my own end, it was in this wise. Heaven did not take me swiftly and painlessly in my own house, nor was I attacked by any illness such as those that generally wear people out and kill them. but my longing to know what you were doing, and the force of my affection for you, this it was that was the death of me." Then I tried to find some way of embracing my poor mother's ghost. Thrice I sprang towards her and tried to clasp her in my arms, but each time she flitted from my embrace, as it were a dream or phantom, and being touched to the quick, I said to her, "Mother, why do you not stay still when I would embrace you? If we could throw our arms around one another, we might find sad comfort in the sharing of our sorrows, even in the house of Hades. Does Proserpine want to lay a still further load of grief upon me by mocking me with a phantom only?" "My son," she answered, "most ill-fated of all mankind, it is not Proserpine that is beguiling you, but all people are like this when they are dead. The sinews no longer hold the flesh and bones together. These perish in the fierceness of consuming fire as soon as life has left the body, and the soul flits away as though it were a dream. Now, however, go back to the light of day as soon as you can, and note all these things that you may tell them to your wife hereafter." Thus we did converse, and anon Proserpine sent up the ghosts of the wives and daughters of all the most famous men. They gathered in crowds about the blood, and I considered how I might question them severally. In the end I deemed that it would be best to draw the keen blade that hung by my sturdy thigh, and keep them from all drinking the blood at once. So they came up, one after the other, and each one, as I questioned her, told me her race and lineage. The first I saw was Tyro. She was daughter of Salmoneus and wife of Cretheus, the son of Aeolus. She fell in love with the river Enipeus, who is much the most beautiful river in the whole world. Once, when she was taking a walk by his side, as usual, Neptune, disguised as her lover, lay with her at the mouth of the river, and a huge blue wave arched itself like a mountain over them, to hide both woman and god, whereon he loosed her virgin girdle and laid her in a deep slumber. When the god had accomplished the deed of love, he took her hand in his own and said, "Tyro, rejoice in all goodwill. The embraces of the gods are not fruitless, and you will have fine twins about this time 12 months. Take great care of them. I am Neptune, so now go home, but hold your tongue and do not tell anyone." Then he dived under the sea, and she in due course bore Peleus and Neleus, who both of them served Jove with all their might. Peleus was a great breeder of sheep and lived in Iolcus, but the other lived in Pylos. The rest of her children were by Cretheus, named Aeson, Phares, and Amithaon, who was a mighty warrior and charioteer. Next to her I saw Antiope, daughter to Aesopus, who could boast of having slept in the arms of even Jove himself, and who bore him 2 sons, Amphion and Zethus. These founded Thebes with its 7 gates and built a wall all round it, for strong though they were, they could not hold Thebes till they had walled it. Then I saw Alcmena, the wife of Amphitryon, who also bore to Jove indomitable Hercules, and Megara, who was daughter to great King Creon, and married the redoubtable son of Amphitryon. I also saw fair Epicast, mother of King Oedipudes, whose awful lot it was to marry her own son without suspecting it. He married her after having killed his father, but the gods proclaimed the whole story to the world, whereon he remained king of Thebes, in great grief for the spite the gods had borne him. But Epicast went to the house of the mighty jailer Hades, having hanged herself for grief, and the avenging spirits haunted him as for an outraged mother, to his ruin bitterly thereafter. Then I saw Chloris, whom Neleus married for her beauty, having given priceless presents for her. She was youngest daughter to Amphion, son of Iasus, and king of Minian Orchomenus, and was queen in Pylos. She bore Nestor, Chromius, and Periclymenus, and she also bore that marvelously lovely woman Pero, who was wooed by all the country round. But Neleus would only give her to him who should raid the cattle of Iphicles from the grazing grounds of Phylace, and this was a hard task. The only man who would undertake to raid them was a certain excellent seer. But the will of heaven was against him, for the rangers of the cattle caught him and put him in prison. Nevertheless, when a full year had passed, and the same season came round again, Iphicles set him at liberty, after he had expounded all the oracles of heaven. Thus, then, was the will of Jove accomplished. And I saw Leda, the wife of Tyndarus, who bore him 2 famous sons, Castor, breaker of horses, and Pollux, the mighty boxer. Both these heroes are lying under the earth, though they are still alive, for by a special dispensation by Jove they die and come to life again, each one of them every other day throughout all time, and they have the rank of gods. After her I saw Iphimedia, wife of Aloeus, who boasted the embrace of Neptune. She bore 2 sons, Otis and Ephialtes, but both were short-lived. They were the finest children that were ever born in this world, and the best-looking, Orion only excepted. For at 9 years old they were 9 fathoms high, and measured 9 cubits round the chest. They threatened to make war with the gods in Olympus, and tried to set Mount Ossa on the top of Mount Olympus, and Mount Pelion on the top of Ossa, that they might scale heaven itself, and they would have done it too, if they had been grown up, but Apollo, son of Leto, killed both of them before they had got so much as a sign of hair upon their cheeks or chin. Then I saw Phaedra, and Procris, and fair Ariadne, daughter of the magician Minos, whom Theseus was carrying off from Crete to Athens, but he did not enjoy her, for before he could do so, Diana killed her in the island of Dia, on account of what Bacchus had said against her. I also saw Mera and Clymene, and hateful Eriphyle, who sold her own husband for gold, but it would take me all night if I were to name every single one of the wives and daughters of heroes whom I saw, and it is time for me to go to bed, either on board ship with my crew, or here. As for my escort, heaven and yourselves will see to it." Here he ended, and the guests sat all of them enthralled and speechless throughout the covered cloister. Then Arete said to them, "What do you think of this man, O Phaeacians? Is he not tall and good-looking? And is he not clever? True, he is my own guest, but all of you share in the distinction. Do not be in a hurry to send him away, nor niggardly in the presents you make to one who is in such great need, for heaven has blessed all of you with great abundance." Then spoke the aged hero, Echeneus, who was one of the oldest men among them. "My friends," said he, "what our august queen has just said to us is both reasonable and to the purpose. Therefore be persuaded by it. But the decision, whether in word or deed, rests ultimately with King Alcinous." "The thing shall be done," exclaimed Alcinous, "as surely as I still live and reign over the Phaeacians. Our guest is indeed very anxious to get home. Still we must persuade him to remain with us until tomorrow. by which time I shall be able to get together the whole sum that I mean to give him. As regards his escort, it will be a matter for you all, and mine above all others, as the chief person among you." And Ulysses answered, "King Alcinous, if you were to bid me to stay here for a whole 12 months, and then speed me on my way, loaded with your noble gifts, I should obey you gladly, and it would redound greatly to my advantage, for I should return fuller-handed to my own people, and should thus be more respected and more beloved by all who see me when I get back to Ithaca." "Ulysses," replied Alcinous, "not one of us who sees you has any idea that you are a charlatan or a swindler. I know there are many people going about who tell such plausible stories that it is very hard to see through them, but there is a style about your language which assures me of your good disposition. Moreover, you have told the story of your own misfortunes and those of the Argives, as though you were a practiced bard. But tell me, and tell me true, whether you saw any of the mighty heroes who went to Troy at the same time with yourself and perished there. The evenings are still at their longest, and it is not yet bedtime. Go on, therefore, with your divine story, for I could stay here listening till tomorrow morning, so long as you will continue to tell us of your adventures." "Alcinous," answered Ulysses, "there is a time for making speeches and a time for going to bed. Nevertheless, since you so desire, I will not refrain from telling you the still sadder tale of those of my comrades who did not fall fighting with the Trojans, but perished on their return through the treachery of a wicked woman. When Proserpine had dismissed the female ghosts in all directions, the ghost of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, came sadly up to me, surrounded by those who had perished with him in the house of Aegisthus. As soon as he had tasted the blood, he knew me, and weeping bitterly, stretched out his arms towards me to embrace me. But he had no strength nor substance any more, and I too wept and pitied him as I beheld him. 'How did you come by your death?' said I. 'King Agamemnon, did Neptune raise his winds and waves against you when you were at sea? Or did your enemies make an end of you on the mainland, when you were cattle lifting or sheep stealing, or while they were fighting in defense of their wives and city?' 'Ulysses,' he answered, 'noble son of Laertes, I was not lost at sea in any storm of Neptune's raising, nor did my foes dispatch me upon the mainland, but Aegisthus and my wicked wife were the death of me between them. He asked me to his house, feasted me, and then butchered me most miserably, as though I were a fat beast in a slaughter-house, while all around me my comrades were slain like sheep or pigs for the wedding breakfast, or picnic, or gorgeous banquet of some great nobleman. You must have seen numbers of men killed, either in a general engagement or in single combat, but you never saw anything so truly pitiable as the way in which we fell in that cloister, with the mixing bowl and the loaded tables lying all about, and the ground reeking with our blood. I heard Priam's daughter, Cassandra, scream as Clytemnestra killed her close beside me. I lay dying upon the earth with the sword in my body, and raised my hands to kill the slut of a murderess, but she slipped away from me. She would not even close my lips nor my eyes when I was dying, for there is nothing in this world so cruel and so shameless as a woman when she has fallen into such guilt as hers was. Fancy murdering her own husband! I thought I was going to be welcomed home by my children and my servants, but her abominable crime has brought disgrace on herself and all women who shall come after, even on the good ones.' And I said, 'In truth Jove has hated the house of Atreus from first to last in the matter of their women's counsels. See how many of us fell for Helen's sake, and now it seems that Clytemnestra hatched mischief against you too during your absence. Be sure, therefore,' continued Agamemnon, and not be too friendly even with your own wife. Do not tell her all that you know perfectly well yourself. Tell her a part only, and keep your own counsel about the rest. Not that your wife, Ulysses, is likely to murder you, for Penelope is a very admirable woman, and has an excellent nature. We left her a young bride with an infant at her breast when we set out for Troy. This child, no doubt, is now grown up happily to man's estate, and he and his father will have a joyful meeting, and embrace one another, as it is right they should do, whereas my wicked wife did not even allow me the happiness of looking upon my son, but killed me ere I could do so. Furthermore I say, and lay my saying to your heart, do not tell people when you are bringing your ship to Ithaca, but steal a march upon them, for after all this there is no trusting women. But now tell me, and tell me true, can you give me any news of my son Orestes? Is he in Orchomenus, or at Pylos, or is he at Sparta with Menelaus? For I presume that he is still living. And I said, Agamemnon, why do you ask me? I do not know whether your son is alive or dead, and it is not right to talk when one does not know. As we two sat weeping and talking thus sadly with one another, the ghost of Achilles came up to us with Patroclus, Antilochus, and Ajax, who was the finest and goodliest man of all the Danaans after the son of Peleus. The fleet descendant of Aeacus knew me and spoke piteously, saying, Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, what deed of daring will you undertake next, that you venture down to the house of Hades, among us silly dead, who are but the ghosts of them that can labor no more? And I said, Achilles, son of Peleus, foremost champion of the Achaeans, I came to consult Tiresias and see if he could advise me about my return home to Ithaca, for I have never yet been able to get near the Achaean land, nor to set foot in my own country, but have been in trouble all the time. As for you, Achilles, no one was ever yet so fortunate as you have been, nor ever will be, for you were adored by all us Argives as long as you were alive, and now that you are here, you are a great prince among the dead. Do not, therefore, take it so much to heart, even if you are dead." "Say not a word," he answered, "in death's favour. I would rather be a paid servant in a poor man's house, and be above ground, than king of kings among the dead. But give me news about my son. Is he gone to the wars, and will he be a great soldier, or is this not so? Tell me also if you have heard anything about my father, Peleus. Does he still rule among the Myrmidons, or do they show him no respect throughout Hellas and Phthia, now that he is old and his limbs fail him? Could I but stand by his side in the light of day, with the same strength that I had when I killed the bravest of our foes upon the plain of Troy, could I but be as I then was, and go even for a short time to my father's house, anyone who tried to do him violence or supersede him would soon rue it." "I have heard nothing," I answered, "of Peleus, but I can tell you all about your son, Neoptolemus, for I took him in my own ship from Scyros with the Achaeans. In our councils of war before Troy he was always first to speak, and his judgment was unerring. Nestor and I were the only two who could surpass him, and when it came to fighting on the plain of Troy, he would never remain with the body of his men, but would dash on far in front, foremost of them all in valor. Many a man did he kill in battle. I cannot name every single one of those whom he slew while fighting on the side of the Argives, but will only say how he killed that valiant hero Eurypylus, son of Telephus, who was the handsomest man I ever saw, except Memnon. Many others also of the Cettians fell around him by reason of a woman's bribes. Moreover, when all the bravest of the Argives went inside the horse that Aeneas had made, and it was left to me to settle when we should either open the door of our ambuscade or close it, though all the other leaders and chief men among the Danaans were drying their eyes and quaking in every limb, I never once saw him turn pale nor wipe a tear from his cheek. He was all the time urging me to break out from the horse, grasping the handle of his sword and his bronze-shod spear, and breathing fury against his foe. Yet when we had sacked the city of Priam, he got his handsome share of the prize money and went on board. Such is the fortune of war, without a wound upon him, neither from a thrown spear nor in close combat, for the rage of Mars is a matter of great chance. When I had told him this, the ghost of Achilles strode off across a meadow full of asphodel, exulting over what I had said concerning the prowess of his son. The ghosts of other dead men stood near me, and told me each his own melancholy tale, but that of Ajax son of Telamon alone held aloof, still angry with me for having won the cause in our dispute about the armour of Achilles. Thetis had offered it as a prize, but the Trojan prisoners and Minerva were the judges. Would that I had never gained the day in such a contest, for it cost the life of Ajax, who was foremost of all the Danaans after the son of Peleus, alike in stature and prowess. When I saw him, I tried to pacify him, and said, "Ajax, will you not forget and forgive, even in death? But must the judgment about that hateful armour still rankle with you? It cost us Argives dear enough to lose such a tower of strength as you were to us. We mourned you as much as we mourned Achilles, son of Peleus himself, nor can the blame be laid on anything but on the spite which Jove bore against the Danaans, for it was this that made him counsel your destruction. Come hither, therefore, bring your proud spirit into subjection, and hear what I can tell you." He would not answer, but turned away to Erebus and to the other ghosts. Nevertheless, I should have made him talk to me in spite of his being so angry, or I should have gone on talking to him, only that there were still others among the dead whom I desired to see. Then I saw Minos, son of Jove, with his golden scepter in his hand, sitting in judgment on the dead, and the ghosts were gathered sitting and standing round him in the spacious house of Hades, to learn his sentences upon them. After him I saw huge Orion in a meadow full of asphodel, driving the ghosts of the wild beasts that he had killed upon the mountains, and he had a great bronze club in his hand, unbreakable for ever and ever. And I saw Tityus, son of Gaia, stretched upon the plain, and covering some 9 acres of ground. 2 vultures on either side of him were digging their beaks into his liver, and he kept on trying to beat them off with his hands, but could not, for he had violated Jove's mistress, Leto, as she was going through Panopeus on her way to Pytho. I saw also the dreadful fate of Tantalus, who stood in a lake that reached his chin. He was dying to quench his thirst, who could never reach the water, for whenever the poor creature stooped to drink, it dried up and vanished, so that there was nothing but dry ground, parched by the spite of heaven. There were tall trees, moreover, that shed their fruit over his head, pears, pomegranates, apples, sweet figs, and juicy olives, but whenever the poor creature stretched out his hand to take some, the wind tossed the branches back again to the clouds. And I saw Sisyphus at his endless task, raising his prodigious stone with both his hands. With hands and feet he tried to roll it up to the top of the hill, but always, just before he could roll it over onto the other side, its weight would be too much for him, and the pitiless stone would come thundering down again onto the plain. Then he would begin trying to push it uphill again, and the sweat ran off him, and the steam rose after him. After him I saw the mighty Hercules, but it was his phantom only, for he is feasting ever with the immortal gods, and has lovely Hebe to wife, who is daughter of Jove and Juno. The ghosts were screaming round him like scared birds, flying all whithers. He looked black as night, with his bare bow in his hands, and his arrow on the string, glaring around as though ever on the point of taking aim. About his breast there was a wondrous golden belt, adorned in the most marvelous fashion with bears, wild boars, and lions with gleaming eyes. There was also war, battle, and death. The man who made that belt, do what he might, would never be able to make another like it. Hercules knew me at once when he saw me, and spoke piteously, saying, "My poor Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, are you too leading the same sorry kind of life that I did when I was above ground? I was son of Jove, but I went through an infinity of suffering, for I became bondsman to one who was far beneath me, a low fellow who set me all manner of labors. He once sent me here to fetch the hellhound, for he did not think he could find anything harder for me than this. But I got the hound out of Hades and brought him to him, for Mercury and Minerva helped me." On this Hercules went down again into the house of Hades, but I stayed where I was in case some other of the mighty dead should come to me, and I should have seen still other of them that are gone before, whom I would fain have seen, Theseus, Pirithous, glorious children of the gods, but so many thousands of ghosts came round me, and uttered such appalling cries, that I was panic-stricken lest Proserpine should send up from the house of Hades the head of that awful monster Gorgon. On this I hastened back to my ship, and ordered my men to go on board at once and loose the hawsers. So they embarked and took their places, whereon the ship went down the stream of the river Oceanus. We had to row at first, but presently a fair wind sprang up. End of Book 11. This is a LibriVox